And this from Jess Weber, type 1 diabetic. Focus on your actions, not numbers. We can only control our actions. Next from Gina Holmes, type 1 diabetic. Don't dwell on what has already happened. Just keep pushing forward. And from Gary Gengler, a type 2 diabetic. Technology helps take the stress out of managing my diabetes. I use the Care Zone iPhone app to help manage my medication schedule, and the One-Touch VarioFlex Bluetooth meters to see blood sugar trends and track my carbs, insulin, and exercise. And finally, from Karen Riley, a person with type 1 diabetes, celebrate the small wins and victories. Reduced A1C blood test results, a good blood sugar day, or a good carb count day. From the Our Readers Talk section, Fun in the Sun, we asked about your favorite warm weather activities and you responded with gusto. Here's to embracing those long summer days. Roller skating, says Alexandra K.S., a type 2 diabetic from Warsaw, Poland. And Terry C. from Grand Ledge, Michigan says, walking. A treadmill isn't the same. It seems like drudgery, but a walk outside is fun. And Patty, type 2 diabetic from Grand Blanc, Michigan, kayaking, hiking, and playing with my pup. Sandy from Blackfoot, Idaho says camping trips, herb gardening, bird watching, and summer cookouts. And Lorraine from Hawkinson, Delaware says swimming laps and riding my new bike. Kelly Kay, who has prediabetes, who's from Oklahoma City, said working in my yard and flower gardens. It is not only good exercise, but so good for stress relief. And finally, from Kathy C., a type 2 diabetic from Cascade Locks, Oregon, getting farm fresh produce. And now, folks, we're moving on to the Diabetic Living magazine for fall of 2018. And the first article is entitled, Remake Your Numbers. After 2 decades of up and down blood sugar, new technology and an extra set of eyes helped this man lower his A1C. Writing by Debbie Koenig. The problem: you're having trouble sticking with a lifestyle change. The remake: do what this man did and find someone who will keep you accountable. The crisis: in June 2017, William McLeod's doctor ran out of patience. McLeod's 65th birthday was looming. His A1C had been a roller coaster for almost 20 years, and with his latest reading at 8.9%, he was running out of time to keep diabetes from doing long-term damage to his body. His doctor wanted to put him on insulin. McLeod asked for one last chance to manage his diabetes without it via a data-based health coaching program called Livongo, that's Livongo, that he just heard about through his insurance plan. The change: Livongo provided McLeod with a smart glucose meter and paired him with a certified diabetes educator, Diabetic Living Advisor Toby Smithson, MS, RDN, CDE. Smithson checked in with him monthly to discuss his meal plan and help him find and stick with activities he would enjoy. I'm a contemporary inspirational music artist, McLeod says, and Toby helped me incorporate music into my exercise. Now I dance daily at home to up-tempo music. McLeod also received immediate feedback through his smart meter every time he tested. When his blood sugar was high, the screen would suggest a low-carb meal. For results within range, it encouraged him to keep up the good work. The device also transmitted his results to Smithson and the Livongo team. If Smithson spotted something amiss, McLeod knew she would call him immediately. I don't want to disappoint that other set of eyes on me, McLeod says. In the 3 months he took part in the program, Smithson never had to make that phone call. The reward: when McLeod returned to his doctor in September, his A1C had dropped 2 full percentage points to 6.9%. Insulin came off the table. Even during a hiatus from the program due to a change in insurance, Smithson's voice stayed with him. He stuck with his meal plan, and he continued to dance and walk daily. I imagine that Toby's watching, he says. McLeod is now back on the Livongo program through the Family Care Plan, which allows persons with diabetes whose insurance doesn't cover Livongo to join for a monthly fee. Support is key. Research shows that app-based coaching programs can help lower A1C. Your employer or insurance plan may offer one, or you can join programs like Livongo for a monthly fee. What worked? This is from Mr. McLeod. Believe that you have a problem that needs attention. For years, McLeod shrugged off his doctor's advice. Nothing changed until he accepted that he had to do something. Make yourself accountable. If you don't have access to a coaching program, ask someone in your life to act as that second set of eyes, a friend or loved one who inspires you to succeed. And finally, treat diabetes management like a job. McLeod talks about Smithson almost like a supervisor. He worked to accomplish each goal they created together. And here are some other remake suggestions. Remake your workout. Join these live fitness classes from the comfort of your living room by Michaela Young, MS. The problem? You like being active at home, but you always put off exercise when something else comes up. The remake. Stick to your goals and stay motivated with live stream classes that you join at a set time. Yoga. What to expect? Live yoga classes with friendly and motivating teachers. And by the way, that's spelled Logyaia, Yogaya. Classes range from 5-minute strength sessions to hour-long energizing sets. You can even receive feedback from your teacher by turning on your webcam. Don't worry, only the instructor can see you. Book classes ahead of time to receive reminders. Yogyaia also offers recorded classes. The cost: 14-day trial is available. Memberships from $9.99 a month at yogyaia.com. And next is the Daily Burn. What to expect? This is a new live 30-minute workout each day at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Classes are a mix of cardio and strength, are designed for all fitness levels, and require no equipment. Daily Burn also has recorded workouts in many styles like dance, balance, boxing, and Pilates. It offers workout programs too. One called True Beginners builds your fitness base. The cost: it's free for 30 days and then $19.95 a month. And the website is dailyburn.com. That's DAILYBURN.com. And finally, live streaming fitness. What to expect? A wide range of fitness classes streaming live every hour on the hour from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Central Time. Variety is the website's strength. Classes mix it up between cardio, stretching, yoga, circuit training, core, boot camp, and more. Live streaming fitness also offers recorded classes, cooking shows, and a large library of recipes. The cost: $9.90 a month per household. Each family member gets a separate login. And the website for that is livestreamingfitness.com. The next remake is entitled Remake Your Snacks. Start snacking right with these make-ahead dips and spreads. The problem: your snacks never leave you feeling satisfied. The remake: these protein and fiber-rich snack combos can help you feel fuller longer. Homemade options. Find these dip and spread recipes on page 89. A half a cup of tuna salad spread with 1 cup of cucumber spears. It's 146 calories, 10 grams carb, 4 grams fiber, and 11 grams of protein. Or a third of a cup of black bean dip with a cup of sliced red bell pepper. 157 calories, 23 grams carb, 7 grams fiber, and 8 grams of protein. And a third cup of tahini yogurt dip plus a half small whole wheat pita. That's 172 calories, 22 grams of carb, 2 grams of fiber, and 10 grams of protein. And here are some store-bought combos. Short on time? These options are just as satisfying. 2 tablespoons of hummus and 5 wheat thins, hint of salt. And that's 99 calories, 12 grams of carb, 3 grams of fiber, and 3 grams of protein. Or 1 tablespoon of peanut butter and a cup of apple slices. And that's 152 calories, 19 grams of carbohydrate, 3 grams of fiber, and 4 grams of protein. And those are some remake your snack ideas. And now we're into remake your screen time. Step away from the device. These tips to disconnect and unplug by Karen Asp. The problem: you're connected 24/7, but the time you spend in front of your digital devices is stressing you out. The remake. Try these strategies for a healthier relationship with your TV, laptop, tablet, and smartphone. Notice your tech habits. How do you know when you're going overboard with screen time? When you're not spending time with others, mainly communicating through technology, or shirking regular responsibilities at work and school, says Larry Rosen, Ph.D., author of The Distracted Mind. Next, have a cutoff time. Research shows that exposure to blue light from device screens can delay your body's release of the sleep-regulating hormone melatonin. Stop using devices an hour before bed, recommends Rosen. Then keep devices out of the bedroom so you can't check them at night. Next, hide your apps. Feel like you can't go 5 minutes without checking your device? First, turn off alerts and notifications. Move social media and other communication apps to the last page of your home screen and put them in a folder so it takes more effort to open them. Set device-free times. Train yourself to cut constant checking by setting an alarm for 15 minutes and turning your devices over or off until the alarm goes off. When the alarm sounds, give yourself 1 minute to check your device and then repeat, gradually lengthening the downtime to 30 minutes. Take regular breaks. Your brain gets overloaded from constant task switching, which is why a 10-minute break for every 90 minutes of screen time is crucial. That break calms overactivity and resets your brain, Rosen says. For your break, go outside, listen to music, or close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. And finally, focus on face-to-face. Set a no technology rule when you're around friends and family, suggests Rosen. Can't make it through dinner without checking your phone? Make it a challenge. The first person who reaches for their phone is on dish duty. And now, remake your self-confidence. 4 ways to empower yourself and take charge of your self-care. Celebrate and reward little moments of success. The problem? You doubt your ability to manage your diabetes, make changes, or reach your goals. The remake? Try these small steps to grow your confidence and foster self-trust. First, speak up. You have to be an advocate for yourself, says Sarah Lasker, MEDCDEMCHES, a certified diabetes educator who's lived with type 1 for 35 years. If speaking up is a challenge, it can help to start small. At your next appointment, try asking your healthcare team to help you create one specific goal, such as eating a healthy breakfast each morning or checking your blood sugar every day before lunch. And 2, celebrate small wins. Daily life with diabetes is filled with little moments of success, and you deserve to celebrate. Give yourself credit for small victories, checking your blood sugar twice in one day or choosing to cook at home instead of eating out. Think of a reward system to track small wins, like putting stickers on a refrigerator calendar. Plan a larger celebration each time you hit 20 small achievements. And 3rd, make empowered choices. You always have a choice, says Lasker. You don't always have to pick the healthiest option, but you should make sure you're making choices for the right reasons. You can have a brownie, but don't make that choice out of rebelling against your disease, she says. If you want dessert or feel like skipping a workout one day, make that part of your plan. Just remember to adjust your carbs and medication accordingly. And finally, learn to let go. Nobody's perfect, but the way you talk to yourself during those imperfect moments can make all the difference. You can beat yourself up for an off blood sugar reading, or you can learn from it, urges Lasker. When you catch yourself thinking negatively, stop. Take a deep breath, reflect on what happened, and let it go. Now we'll read a few from the Inspired section of this week's magazine. Sharing stories makes us stronger. Diabetes champions. These 5 individuals turned a diabetes diagnosis into a stepping stone for advocacy. Mila Ferrer, project manager, Beyond Type 1, Orlando, Florida. Jamie Ferrer, the youngest of Mila Ferrer's 3 sons, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was only 3 years old. Now that I know what type 1 diabetes looks like, my son clearly had all the symptoms, she says. But I never thought a 3-year-old could develop type 1 diabetes. The whole family dove into learning about how to manage the disease, while maintaining as much of a normal childhood as possible for all the boys. Now 15, Jamie is a talented baseball player. We have very high expectations of him, Ferrer says. Type 1 diabetes gives him a lot of discipline. He knows what his goals are, and he knows that he's going to work very, very hard. In 2011, 4 years after Jamie's diagnosis, Ferrer started a blog about her experiences writing in her native Spanish. Why in Spanish? Because when I started looking for other parents, other people who had been living with type 1 who could speak my language, I could not find anyone, she says. The blog, called Jamie, Mi Dulce Guerrero, or Jamie, My Sweet Warrior, offers a forthright take on parenting a child with type 1. Our Hispanic community is very private, she says. I always share, oh my God, we forgot to bolus and he's in the 300s. Or, his insulin pump stopped working because you have to teach people how to deal with every situation. Blogging led her to full-time advocacy work in 2013 when she joined the Diabetes Hands Foundation as the community manager for A2 Diabetes, the Spanish language arm. In 2017, both were absorbed by Beyond Type 1, where she now works as a project manager. Ferrer urges parents of type 1 children to form support groups within their own communities. If I call my best friend and talk to her about Jamie's type 1 diabetes, she might say, I'm so sorry you're going through that. But she's not going to understand, Ferrer says. But if I talk to a mom in my group, she might say, I've been through that, everything's going to be fine. Just remember to do A, B, and C. The next inspiration story is Chad Cherry, chef and founder, Refresh Live, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Before Chad Cherry, now 38, was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2007, he had a sense that something was wrong. He was always thirsty. I would sit down to a meal with a 2-liter bottle of soda or a carton of juice, says Cherry, who was working in corporate sales and also doing overnight and weekend shifts at Thrifty Car Rental. When he went to the hospital, he was diagnosed with type 2 and admitted for a month. He was put on insulin, but otherwise was not given a lot of information about how to change. I left the hospital in search of things I should have known, he says. He discovered organic food and immersed himself in cooking and healthy eating. Soon, he started teaching his family members how to cook and eat healthy too. 2 years later, he bought a restaurant in Miami so he could cook healthy food for a wider audience. In 2010, he planned a cycling tour around Florida with fellow chefs to promote healthy eating. Each day, the group would cycle to a new destination and offer organic food and cooking demos. Everywhere we went, I saw people who looked like me, who had little to no knowledge of basic nutrition, he says. He realized people needed this information from someone they could relate to, presenting it in a way they could understand. After the bike tour, Cherry decided, I'm going to find a way to reach people where they are at. He began booking speaking gigs to talk about food accessibility. In 2015, he created Refresh Live, the foundation he runs with his wife, Karen. The organization aims to bring farm-to-table produce into food deserts, neighborhoods without access to grocery stores or farmers markets, and to educate the Fort Lauderdale community on how to prepare healthy food. Cherry offers regular food demonstrations at his local grocery store, area churches, and festivals, and is always looking at how he can expand his reach. 11 years after his diagnosis, Cherry is no longer on insulin and has lost over 80 pounds. But his focus is broader than his own health. Everything he does is part of his commitment to helping his community get healthy. Diabetes is with me every day, but I don't want the generational cycle of diabetes to be passed down, he says. That's it for this week, folks. Happy listening.
Thank you for joining us for Diabetes Update. We hope you found the content of this program informative. If you missed any part of it, you can listen to it again on our website at ticnetwork.org.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Chris Knapp as she presents the book, Huck, the remarkable true story of how one lost puppy taught a family and a whole town about hope and happy endings. Michael was 4 when his relentless campaign for a dog began, but his parents, Jana and Rich, were steadfast. Bringing a dog into their fast-paced New York City lives was utterly impractical. However, Huck, a sweet, mischievous, red-haired toy poodle, joins the family and wins everyone's heart. A few months later, the family ventures to baseball spring training, leaving Huck with Janet's sister in Ramsey, New Jersey. Barely 24 hours into the trip, Janet receives the dreaded phone call. Huck has slipped through the backyard fence and run away. Broken-hearted and frantic, the family catches the first plane to New Jersey to begin a search for their lost puppy. It is a race against time. Moved by the family's plight, strangers join the search, one that proves to be an unyielding test of determination and faith. Touching and warm-hearted, Huck is a spirit-lifting story about resilience, the generosity of strangers, and hope. Huck, the remarkable true story of how one lost puppy taught a family and a whole town about hope and happy endings, by Janet Elder, will air for 8 episodes on the Select Mix Book Hour, beginning September 11th and ending September 20th.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is volunteer reader Fred Tilley, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more, coming our way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Next up, the Talking Information Center presents readings from Popular Science and Popular Mechanics magazines. Please stay tuned.
We're sorry, this program is currently not available. We'll return to regular programming as soon as possible. We're sorry, this program is currently not available. We'll return to regular programming as soon as possible.
to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Holly Miller, broadcasting from Worcester, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Coming up next, the Talking Information Center proudly presents The Ability Show. Please stay tuned.
Hello, this is Kathleen, and today I'll be reading to you from TIC's Ability Program. Parenting, Year 1 of the Owen Experience by Seth McBride. Kelly and I didn't even have a name picked out before he was born. After 8 months of waffling, Owen and Micah were the boy name finalists. Choosing a name that he'd carry through life seemed like a big responsibility. Then out he popped, all wrinkles and cries and vernix and monkey toes. Owen, I thought. That's Owen. What do you think? I asked Kelly. He's beautiful, she said. I smiled. Yes, he is, but what about his name? Owen, she said. I smiled again. Guess it fit. Of the many unknowns that awaited us on the other end of Kelly's pregnancy, Owen's name was the first to be resolved. Like all first-time parents, we had 1,000 questions. My concerns about being a parent with a disability weren't related to anything existential, like what will he think about having a dad in a wheelchair, or what will his friends think. I knew enough fathers through wheelchair rugby to understand that to a baby, you're not a wheelchair guy, you're just dad. But some of those dads could also count the number of times they changed a diaper on one hand. I have a C7-8 motor complete quadriplegia, which manifests in weak hands and poor trunk stability. And that was where my concerns were. How long was he going to tolerate my floppy-fingered fumbling with a diaper? How would I carry him around and get him into and out of a car seat? Kelly would be going back to work full-time after a few months of maternity leave, and I would be on my own with Owen for 8 to 10 hours at a time. I didn't have an option to try and change a few diapers and saying, this isn't working, baby, you should do it. And I sure wasn't going to sit with him inside all day. I'd have to figure out how to do these things my way, and I had no idea how Owen would respond. And I shouldn't have worried. Adaptability is something we often have to relearn after a disability. For babies, it comes naturally. First, diapers. I didn't actually get a diaper all the way on the first time. I tried to change Owen, but I didn't get peed on either, so I took it as a win. He was a week or two old, and I decided I needed to get to it. Diapers are one thing, but everything else from getting him up onto the changing table to unbuttoning his onesie was terra incognita for me as well. By the time I figured out how to get him on the changing pad, on the shoulder first, shimmy forward under the table, then lay him down, he was already starting to get a little fussy. After a few failed attempts, I figured out how to use my right thumb, my most functional digit, to pop open the buttons on the bottom of his onesie. At this point, he was starting to yell a little, and landing some solid kicks to my face. In the blows in between, I was trying to settle the situation with my calm, authoritative voice. Owen, we will not be driven by fear into an age of unreason. Okay, maybe the Morrow impersonation was more in tone than that content, but either way, Owen wasn't buying it. Neither was Kelly, who appeared in the doorway to watch the commotion. You want some help? She asked. I did. Kelly came over, got the diaper on, and Owen calmed down with ease. I put on my grumpy face. A few attempts later, I did get pee and poop on me, and Owen burped milk all over himself. But I also got both of us cleaned up and a fresh diaper on, so I took that as a win, too. It took a few weeks for me to actually get comfortable changing diapers. We were using a combination of cloth and disposable, and each variation required a slightly different technique to get the closures tight enough for the diaper to hold more than a few drops of pee. Once I got comfortable in the process, so did Owen. He could sense nervousness and would pounce on it like a tiger. The only way to keep him from getting wild was to be confident that I was actually in charge of the situation. I still took 2 or 3 times as long as Kelly did to complete the process. But as soon as I was comfortable enough to actually project the authority that I was trying to imitate earlier, he calmed right down with me. He'd have gotten agitated if Kelly took 15 minutes to change his diaper and clothes. But with me, he just seemed to understand. Dad's slower than Mom, and that's just the way it is. Everything is better outside. The motion of being walked is calming to infants, a steady bouncing rock that evolutionary ingrained them to calm them down. A pushing motion in my wheelchair was definitely not the same thing. Owen would fall asleep in a few minutes when Kelly put him in a carrier, nestled against her chest while we strolled in the neighborhood. When I tried, he'd cast a few minutes and then start wriggling and fighting the carrier like it was a straitjacket. After a number of unsuccessful attempts, we decided to reevaluate. Owen wasn't going to sleep well on me, but he loved being outside. The fix was to just flip him around to face forward. If we were going to be outside, he wanted to see the world, not my chest. We had a forward-facing baby Bjorn carrier that had clasps my hands were capable of operating. I could take him out while wandering as soon as his back was strong enough to keep his head from flopping around. Up until Owen was 5 months old or so, he didn't weigh enough to really throw off my balance. As it got heavier and more functional, I loosened the straps, so he was basically sitting on my lap. That way he was supported, but the whole of his weight wasn't pulling me forward. Going outside was damn near a magic trick for any time Owen started to get fussy. Didn't matter if it was snowing or 45 degrees and raining, as long as there was open sky and we were moving, he was happy. That realization was the key to my first year of daddy daycare. Owen is relatively chill as far as babies go, but his moods during year 1 were a mystery to me. Being hungry pissed him off. Being tired pissed him off. Those I understood and could fix, but there were other things that pissed him off that were entirely invisible to the world in which I resided. Whenever those imperceptible agitators started to tickle his angry bone, I would take him outside to wander around, and generally all would be forgotten. Another key component of my being able to take care of Owen while Kelly was at work was being able to get him off the floor. I didn't want him to be stuck on my lap, and once he started to get more mobile, I couldn't leave him on a bed or a couch and expect him not to wiggle off. Plus, what if I dropped him? Of course, I did drop him. Once off my lap, which was downright terrifying for both of us. Twice I flipped over backward while holding him. That was less scary for me as I was cradling him and I knew that physically he was fine, but it still freaked him out. A practical tip: if you have an adjustable center of gravity, move your axle forward to remove some tippiness from your chair before your baby gets strong enough to really wriggle and kick. Anyway, parenting failures included, there are plenty of reasons I needed to get Owen off the floor. But lacking functional back extensors, I can't sit up from being bent over my lap while holding anything. And Owen didn't have enough neck strength to do the tiger hug trick. A friend of ours through Rugby, a guy with less function than me who did change his kids' diapers, sorry C6ers, no excuses, I had a sling that he'd received from another quad dad, and when his first was born. It was basically a big oval of fabric with straps on either side. He gave it to us before Owen was born, and the sling worked so well that I ended up having 2 more sewn. With the sling, I could get him off the floor with little more than a wrist extension and biceps. I have other friends who swore by overalls for the same principle. They function like a luggage handle for your kid. With overalls on, I could pick Owen up by simply sliding my hand under the shoulder straps and lifting, but there were drawbacks. First, overalls were difficult to put on, and though baby ones have snaps at the legs so that you can change a diaper, I couldn't get them snapped back up while he was in them, so a diaper change meant taking them all the way off. Second, depending on the cut, when his full weight was on the straps, the front of the overalls would start pressing into Owen's neck, giving him a bit of a choke. Not ideal. We wound up with a number of pairs after some trial and error. I figured out the ones that fit best for lifting purposes. The absolute best was a pair of Patagonia fleece overalls. They had some stretch and a V-cut neck, which meant I could lift him wherever I needed, and he stayed comfortable. Alas, Patagonia doesn't appear to sell those anymore. But if you really need something similar, get them. The real world. Given the difficulty to get on, overalls weren't a daily wardrobe choice. I reserved them mostly for when Owen and I were venturing out in the car. First, let me say that for someone with my function, getting a baby into and out of a car seat sucks. There is no easy way to do it. Lifting him out away from my body to bridge the gap between my chair and the car wasn't doable with both hands holding Owen. Every time we needed to go somewhere, I wriggled the overalls onto him so he could stabilize myself with my right hand and swing him over the car seat with my left. Once he was in his seat, there was usually a good 5 to 8 minutes of fumbling to get him situated. The straps untwisted and the buckles done up, the first times he got rightfully pissed. He was used to Mom doing it. Slip in the seat, click, click, done. But like the diaper changes, he quickly got used to my painfully slow process and would maintain far more patience with me than he ever would for Kelly. For that first year, I felt like I was continuously swimming upstream against my function, trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. The thing about being a new parent is that I was so afraid to mess up. But it's impossible not to. It's a learning process, and that involves messing up. Babies don't judge you for it. That'll come later. When I was figuring out how to do something new, Owen would sometimes yell and kick and scream for a while, but then he'd get over it. People always ask me if having a kid is any different than I expected. Looking back over the first year of the Owen experience, it was more difficult than I ever would have thought, but it was also way more fun. You're learning to care for a very needy little being that has no way of expressing his needs other than through crying. And you're doing on very little sleep, but you're also laughing and singing and playing and getting to act like a goon. Whatever your level of function, to your kid, you're their normal. Just do whatever you do, however you need to do it. To Owen, it doesn't matter how I do things, as long as I keep him fed, take him outside, love him, play with him, and don't drop him too often. He thinks I'm pretty great. Through the Looking Glass. Through the Looking Glass is a nonprofit based in Berkeley, California that provides services, training, and consultations for parents with disabilities and parents of children with disabilities. This award-winning organization has been around for decades. So if you have questions or need help from assistive products to techniques, support groups, and advocacy, they can connect you with the resources you need, and they also provide support for parents with disabilities in child custody proceedings. Through the Looking Glass, phone number 1-800-644-2666 or lookingglass.org. Baby gear hacks. Kelly and I both needed to get our bodies moving most every day to feel normal. But finding the time to work out is tough with jobs and an infant. Kelly could run with Owen in the stroller, but I couldn't push faster than a stroll with Owen on me in a carrier. The first solution was an adaptation for my hand cycle that Kelly's dad rigged up while we were visiting in Ohio. We bought a Thule Yep Mini front bike seat off Craigslist, but at 3 months, Owen wasn't stable enough yet to sit upright in it. Her dad fabricated a rack that clamped onto the front of my top-end Force CC hand cycle. The Yep seat then clamped onto the rack at a more reclined angle than it would on a regular bike. Owen could lie in the seat, strapped in and secure while I rode him around. He loved it from the first ride. When we got back to Portland and Owen and I were home alone during a day, a morning bike ride was guaranteed contentment for Owen and a great way to get the blood flowing for me. That was definitely a win. The world opened up to us a little bit more when Owen got to 5 months and started to get some sitting stability. Until then, unless Owen was in the carrier, I had been rolling around with him, laid down on my lap, head at my knees, and it worked in the house, but I had to hold on to him with one hand and push with the other, switching back and forth to go anywhere. Outside on any sort of a slope or uneven terrain, it simply didn't work. When he was more stable, but before he could sit on his own, I started putting him into a molded rubber seat called a bumbo seat. I'd set the bumbo on the table, lift Owen up into it, and then wheel under the table and pull the seat down to my lap. He would kick his tiny little legs excitement as soon as we rolled to head down the block. Realizing how much I liked it, I bolted a webbing strap with sewn loops at either end to the front seat, and I'd pull the straps taut around the sides and slip the loops over my back rest bar. That kept a seat secure enough so that I could wheel at the normal speed all over the city, and he stayed stable on my lap. Parenting the Mobile Years by Stephanie Arash. My son Henry took his first real steps on Easter Sunday 2017. He saw his cousin, who was 2 months older and toddling all over, and he thought to his little baby self, "Hey, if he can do it, so can I." From then on, it was non-stop. One of my biggest worries came from not knowing how mobile Henry would be. Would I be able to keep up with him? In my wheelchair, would he still progress at normal stages because he didn't see me walking? My greatest fear of all was that he would take off into traffic and I wouldn't be able to stop him. One day, my son and I were in the front yard of our house when my husband was taking groceries inside. At that exact moment, Henry took 2 steps down the driveway. My imagination instantly flashed forward to a speeding car driving out of control and hitting my baby. Even though we live on a quiet street in a gated subdivision where neighbors generally drive slowly, at that moment I was certain he was going to be hit. I shrieked my husband's name and he came running out of the house, no doubt expecting to find dismembered limbs or some major catastrophe. My son stopped and looked at his mama to see why she was yelling like a crazy person. And that was when it hit me. I am his mom, and for the most part he listens to me because I've taught him to. That's when I realized I was going to be okay with the whole toddler stage. So here are some tips and tricks I picked up from that moment forward that helped with this critical phase of his life. The wheelchair walker. We bought our son several walkers to help him learn to walk, but none of them rivaled my wheelchair, a Tie-Lite ZRA that has a large bar across the back. Henry would grab onto the bar, pull himself up, and push me around the house. We would spend a couple of hours a day walking laps around the house. No exaggeration. I loved him using me as a human walker for 2 reasons. First, it was a really special bonding time for us. I had been concerned I would be left out of the whole hands-on experience of his learning to walk. But now I was an integral part of it. Second, I could control how fast he went and help him navigate things like turns and walls. When he used his other walkers, he would often crash. When I encourage him to learn things the hard way, I also encourage safety. My being able to control speed and obstacles meant he was able to focus on the walking basics. As he got more accustomed to walking, I allowed him to borrow my chair to push around the house when I wasn't in it. Yes, our walls are now the worse for wear, and we will require some touch-up paint. But he is really good at maneuvering and will have a lot of practice if he ever gets into demolition derby driving. For the record, or in case your kid doesn't like pushing your chair, of the walkers that we bought, my son's favorite was the Little Tykes Light and Go 3-in-1 activity walker. He could sit and play with all the fun cranks, twists, buttons, and lights. He could stand and play with the activities, or he could just hold the handle and walk with it. Going into public with a toddler is when things start to get tricky, especially with my son. When my son was a baby, I used a Moby wrap to secure him to me. I liked that I could make him as secure as I wanted, and we weren't confined to a carrier that came in a predetermined size. As soon as Henry was big enough to sit up on his own firmly, I used the Moby wrap to tie him to my lap. From about age 1 on, if we were out in public, I would sit my son on my left leg, wrap the Moby wrap around us 2 or 3 times with a knot behind my back. At home, he was very good at balancing on my lap, and I could alternate wheeling with one hand while supporting him with the other. But in public, I didn't want to risk hitting an unexpected bump, hole or rock or anything that we could interfere with my casters and possibly send him flying. He was always very secure, and I was able to smell his baby shampoo. Win-win. From 20 months to 2 years, my son stopped wanting to sit on my lap in public. At our local mall, after I parked in the structure, I would get him out of the car, attach a leash to his left hand, the other end to my right arm. We explored a harness leash, but he did not care for that one. The hand leash he tolerated. I liked the mall in the mornings because it gave us a quiet place to explore while he was confined. Running became a new hobby of his, and he always wanted to be on the go. At the mall, he would just do laps. While he was learning to stay near me, we used the leash, not only at the mall, but at any parking lot where Henry and I were on our own. We did get some odd looks from people, but my son's safety was more important to me than the opinion of strangers. We only used the leash for a few months, and maybe only a dozen times. He caught on quickly that he needed to stay close to me at all times when we were in parking lots or crossing streets. In fact, people often comment about how he stays right next to me when we are walking. I am still vigilant and remind him while we are near moving vehicles that he needs to stay by my side. When we are in a store and my son gets antsy and wants to take off, I distract him with "find something blue" or "find the number 9. He loves letters, numbers, and colors, and when he is interested in something, he forgets about wanting to run all over. I can keep up with him when he runs off, but in places like the grocery store, it's hard to pull him out of the way of a cart or control my chair at the same time. I've nearly spun out numerous times trying to stop him with one hand and my chair with the other. People aren't usually expecting a runaway toddler to dart in front of their shopping cart, so it's up to me to try and keep him from being smushed. If Henry stays close to me, then I reward him with letting him lead where we go, within reason, for a few minutes. Our grocery store has a big metal truck that moves around the store for various displays. I bargain with my son and tell him that if he stays close to me for a few aisles, then we can go see the truck. This usually works. Recently, we stayed at a hotel, so I made a deal that if he stayed with me while we checked in and went to the room to leave our stuff, we could explore and he could lead the way. We went up and down the hallways and explored every floor in the hotel. Again, I loved confined spaces where he can have some freedom and where I can easily keep up with him. When it comes to time to load up and leave, it's time for another game. Where we live, the temperatures reach well over 100 for half the year, so in the hot parking lot, I load the car first and then I load him. To keep him close while I'm busy, I allow him to stand on his own while I put things away, as long as he stays in the blue striped section next to the accessible spot. He isn't allowed to cross the blue, but sometimes I give him something light to hold so he feels like he has a job. When it's just the two of us, I normally have to put a bag in the trunk while we shop, or his backpack in the car after school. Making it a game helps. If he stays in the blue, he's safe. If he crosses, he's out and he loses a treat. Most of all, have fun. I found that if you get overly stressed out, your kid will pick up on it. So why not have fun when you can? My son loves racing me in my wheelchair. I usually let him win. When we are parking on the sidewalk to his school, we race. I only do this when he's running in the direction I want him to go, and there is no threat of him ever getting run over by carts or cars. He likes it when I do wheelies and call them my jumps. If we have to wait somewhere that I feel is not safe and I want to keep him distracted so he doesn't dart into danger, we do jumps and see how high we can jump or how many times we can jump. I thought the early baby stage would be the most worrisome as a parent in a wheelchair, but I've come to realize that the mobility stage is equally nerve-wracking. However, I think that's just the way parenting is in general, a common thread among all parents, no matter your physical abilities. The important thing is to remember that your child will listen to you if you are firm enough and make things fun when possible. So enjoy the crazy ride. Bully Pulpit by Ian Reuter. coming full circle. My first memory of new mobility is wanting nothing to do with it. I was barely 18 and struggling on a ventilator in rehab in a couple of months after blowing out my C5 vertebra in a rollover accident. I had spent all my time surrounded by other people with spinal cord injuries, learning about spinal cord injuries, talking about spinal cord injuries, and living with spinal cord injury. When my parents offered me a copy of New Mobility, the last thing in the world I wanted was to read about spinal cord injuries and the wheelchair life that awaited me beyond the hospital walls. If you had told me that 20 years later I would be the editor of New Mobility, I feel pretty confident I would have told you there was a better chance I'd be walking by then. But here I am, feeling out the bully pulpit and formally introducing myself to you, the readers. I've had the pleasure of getting to know many of you over the last 7 years. I started as a sporadic contributor to the website and then working on the editor of the sister publication Life in Action, and finally served as an editor and writer for New Mobility for the last 4 years. Whether via email, phone call, or even occasional fax, you've shared your honest responses and insights, and in doing so, helped to educate me and strengthen the magazine. I have grown to oh so cherish the relationships I've made, that it's so hard for me to believe I almost closed myself off from them. After I got out of rehab, I focused on me. I went to college, learned to manage personal care attendants, negotiate government benefits, and handle all the other fun stuff that comes with an injury. I didn't have any wheelers in my inner circle, and I saw no need to change that. If not for the fortuitous meeting with NM Executive Editor Josie Bizik in 2010, I might have stayed on that path. I met Josie at an advocacy event in Washington, D.C., and pitched myself as the answer to all the magazine's writing needs. She gave me a chance to write an article for newmobility.com, and, well, the rest is history. Working with the New Mobility staff under the aegis of the United Spinal brought me into a rich world I feel foolish for having ignored. Much of my writing prior to New Mobility focused on sports. It was fun, but often left me feeling empty. Writing about other wheelchair users and the issues we all face every day proved more challenging, but infinitely more rewarding. I've learned how much about how little I knew about disability, and I've developed a deep appreciation for the strength of our community and the richness of our stories. I've seen how important it is that we tell these stories in an authentic way, not only for our well-being, but so others can begin to understand the complex lives we lead. For 29 years, New Mobility has been at the forefront of doing just this, and I am honored and excited to keep forging ahead with you. Reframed by Rebecca Torres. I smile. I smile when I'm happy, when I'm being polite, or because I think someone is amazing. I also smile when my heart is broken, hoping no one will see past my teeth. Those kinds of smiles are hard. They take all the muscles in my face to sustain, and my throat contracts to keep my heart from escaping. For a long time following my car accident and spinal cord injury, I observed my loved ones. I saw hurt in their eyes, but we all silenced it in order to protect one another from pain. You are so strong, people said. She has such a positive attitude. I did, and I do. I was optimistic and determined, but that didn't mean I wasn't hurting or that sometimes don't feel the pain or loss of the life I once had. I felt I shouldn't show sadness or anger because it would make others feel them too. Many times I wished someone would just ask me how I was doing and wait long enough to hear the truth. But I was too scared and I didn't want to share my burden, so I'd quickly answer, "Great, and how are you?" In recent years, the hurt I'd see in my family's eyes is not as intense and fragile. We are allowing ourselves to talk, even if it's difficult. Moments where we recall the details of a wreck, hospital smells, or coming back home in a wheelchair may lead to tears and even laughter in between. It feels good to cry. I feel relieved. Another reason to smile. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you for Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Jane, broadcasting from Lowell, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Up next from the Talking Information Center, it's the weekend review of the Wall Street Journal. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, this is Melissa here to read from the Wall Street Journal. My first three readings will be from Monday, August 27th paper, and then the rest will be from the weekend review for August 25th and 26th. We'll begin with A Life of Service and Good-Natured Irreverence by John Lehman. John McCain was not a model midshipman. While at the Naval Academy, he earned so many demerits for unsanctioned outings that by graduation he was made to march the equivalent of 17 round trips between Annapolis and the fleshpots of Baltimore. He later regretted finishing 5th from the bottom of his class instead of dead last. As his mother, still alive at 106, often said, he was really a scamp. McCain preferred Maverick. A distinct, good-natured irreverence was among John McCain's abiding features, and for decades I saw it firsthand. He kept friends at his side during both of his presidential campaigns, not only to tell him the unpleasant truth when he made mistakes dealing with the press or answering town hall questions, but also to share in his biting wit and wry sense of humor. When turbulence frightened the local politicians aboard a flight across the Midwest, McCain put them at ease with one line delivered cool as ice. "You are safe. I know that I won't die in a plane crash. I already tried that 3 times." He was referring to his naval career, which involved 2 crashes before he was famously shot down over North Vietnam. Sometimes McCain's humor struck closer to the bone. On the morning of the 2008 New Hampshire primary, he addressed the press outside a hotel owned by his friend Steve Dupree. Asked for his thoughts on the primary with Mr. Dupree at his side, McCain answered, "I am so glad to be leaving this terrible hotel with threadbare towels, thin soap, and cheap furniture." The forthrightness of McCain's private persona was of a piece with boldness he displayed as a sailor. In 1967, McCain was caught in a fire on the USS Forrestal off the coast of Vietnam. Suddenly surrounded by explosions, while strapped into his bomb-laden jet, he climbed over the windscreen, swung to the deck, and instead of running for cover, rushed to help a sailor manning a thrashing fire hose until the blaze was contained hours later. After he was shot down and captured later that year, McCain's behavior was even more heroic. His North Vietnamese captors intensified his torture upon hearing of his famous father, the Pacific commander. When the press asked Admiral John McCain what he planned to do about his son, he replied, "Pray for him," and never commented again. In July 1968, when the North Vietnamese offered to release him, the young McCain famously refused to go until all prisoners of war who had been there longer had been released. After enduring 5 more years of beatings and torture, McCain returned home with his brother POWs. Soon after that, I met him, still on crutches, and we remained friends thereafter. I forgot to mention that this is by John Lehman, who was the Navy Secretary in the Reagan administration and the author of a new book, Oceans Ventured, Winning the Cold War at Sea. In addition to making his critics in Congress, in addition to rankling his critics in Congress, McCain's indomitable attitude occasionally earned him enemies overseas. In 2001, when George W. Bush said he had looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes and seen his soul, McCain retorted that he had also looked into Putin's eyes, but he had seen just 3 letters, KGB. The Russians soon thereafter started targeting him with online lies. To this day, emails circulate purporting to come from unnamed fellow POWs, squadron mates, and authoritative sources, accusing McCain of being a coward, a squeal, a lousy pilot, and worse. Even Americans who knew him only as a politician couldn't doubt his boldness. As chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, he led the passage of the most important reforms to the Pentagon in 7 decades in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2017. More broadly, McCain rekindled Americans' understanding of international threats and the urgent need for strategy. He did all of this with a bipartisan openness that earned his colleagues' respect. Shortly before McCain was diagnosed with cancer last year, a few friends traveled with him to Monaco to meet Prince Albert and Princess Caroline. After a lovely dinner in the garden, McCain was shown the Palace Pub, where he discovered a plaque commemorating his first cruise to the Mediterranean aboard the USS Independence in 1962, given to Princess Grace by the ship's captain. It was on that port call that McCain learned to play craps in the casino. After a gracious and very late farewell to the royals, McCain joyfully led us to the same craps table at which he had first played, and amid a large selfie-clicking crowd of Europeans, he won £900 before the sun came up. Soon after, when McCain was diagnosed with brain cancer and began the long ordeal of his treatment, his character was undiminished. He always bore a laconic smile and frequently offered wisecracks, invariably comforted his many visitors, and occasionally hurled verbal thunderbolts at his former adversaries. To his pals he would say, "Cheer up, none of us gets out of this alive, and I have had more than my share of years and blessings." He showed not a tinge of apprehension about his next great adventure. And this was by John Lehman, Navy Secretary in the Reagan administration. Okay. We also have an obituary for Neil Simon, the king of stage comedy. The playwright whose Lost in Yonkers won a Pulitzer Prize in 1991 died on Sunday at age 91. This is by Terry Teachout, the Journal's drama critic, who writes Sightings, a column about the arts twice monthly. All comedy dates, and every pure comedian sooner or later becomes passé, even one as beloved as Neil Simon, who died on Sunday at the age of 91. Not only did Mr. Simon have a quarter-century run as America's most popular playwright, but Lost in Yonkers, his 20th and best play, won him a Pulitzer Prize in 1991. The Pulitzer jurors described it as a mature work by an enduring and often undervalued American playwright. And pretty much everybody agreed by then that he had evolved into something other than a joke merchant. But Mr. Simon would never again write a full-fledged box office smash, and none of his plays has since been successfully revived on Broadway, save as a star vehicle. His last bow there as a playwright, a 2009 revival of Brighton Beach Memoirs, directed by David Cromer, closed after 9 performances. Nonetheless, it's just as noteworthy that Mr. Simon suited the tastes of American audiences so well for such an extraordinarily long time. His 1-2 here comes the punchline style of comedy, which took shape in the 1950s during his tenure as a writer of sketches for Your Show of Shows, Sid Caesar's classic TV series, continued to come across with freshness and immediacy throughout the 60s and 70s, even as the culture around him was changing in ways that were radical in every sense of the word. And as Mr. Simon grew older, he chafed at his limitations and started turning out stage comedies like The Prisoner of Second Avenue, 1971, and screenplays like The Heartbreak Kid, 1972, that were tougher than their predecessors. As he explained to an interviewer, "I used to ask, what is a funny situation? Now I ask, what is a sad situation and how can I tell it humorously?" A case in point is The Sunshine Boys, 1972, the story of 2 feuding vaudeville comedians who attempt to reconcile just as one of them starts to show clear signs of succumbing to early-stage dementia. At once explosively funny and arrestingly, even unnervingly dark in tone, The Sunshine Boys made it clear that there was far more to the author of The Odd Couple, 1965, than virtuoso wisecrackery. In the 1980s, Mr. Simon started quarrying his own life as the subject matter for his plays, turning out Brighton Beach Memoirs, 1983, Biloxi Blues, 1985, and Broadway Bound, 1986, a trilogy of explicitly autobiographical comedies in which he told how a child of Depression-era near poverty shinned his way up the greasy pole of theatrical success. But these plays, like the predecessors, are an uneasy blend of emotional directness and stand-up comedy. It was as if Mr. Simon felt the need to apologize for his underlying seriousness. In Lost in Yonkers, by contrast, he broke decisively with precedent, writing for the first time an unabashedly black comedy about a Jewish family that is dysfunctional to the point of paralysis. "I thought I was writing the bleakest of plays," he later said. So he was, but he took care to leaven the loaf of sorrow with biting, at times ferocious humor. And the result was a play that had something genuinely serious to say about American family life and its discontents. Alas, Mr. Simon was unable to build on the artistic success of Lost in Yonkers. This stands to reason. Playwriting tends to be a young man's game, and his creative flame had dimmed after 3 decades of exhaustingly hard use. Perhaps he had by then simply said what he had to say. In any case, American comedy in the 90s was giving way to newer, less specifically joke-based approaches, and what had once seemed fresh and immediate increasingly sounded old-fashioned. Whatever the reason, Mr. Simon would never again ring the gong of unequivocal box office success on Broadway. And while his plays remained popular with amateur troupes and even companies elsewhere in America, most of the major regional theaters tend to steer clear of his work. All this notwithstanding, I've come to feel in recent years that Mr. Simon's best plays are worthy of revival, if they're directed in a way that brings out their seriousness instead of going for too easy laughs. Jen Thompson's 2012 off-Broadway revival of Lost in Yonkers, which she staged as a down-the-center family drama instead of leaning on the comedy, persuaded me that I'd been too quick to dismiss Mr. Simon as a voice from the distant past. Since then, I've seen several equally compelling regional revivals of his work that bode well for its long-term prospects. It will, of course, take time for posterity to sort out Neil Simon, but the process has begun, and I have no doubt that his very best plays will eventually come to be remembered not as museum pieces, but as compelling comic commentaries on the fears and foibles of life in post-war America. Yes, they were also pulverizingly funny, but Mr. Simon, like all great comedians, was always kidding on the square. The Iliad from a Woman's Perspective. This is a review of the novel The Silence of the Girls, which comes out September 4th, by Pat Barker. The reviewer is Tobias Gray. Homer's epic poem, The Iliad, opens with a dispute between Achilles and his commanding general Agamemnon over 2 young women. Reading it centuries later, the writer Pat Barker says she was struck by how the girls, who say nothing at all, are simply transferred like parcels. It seemed important to me to address that and try to fill in that silence. So her latest novel, The Silence of the Girls, in her latest novel, Ms. Barker decided to tell the story of the Iliad from the perspective of those women and others who were taken captive during the Trojan War. She has written about World Wars I and II for the past 25 years, including the Booker Prize-winning The Ghost Road. But Greek mythology for her was uncharted territory. I have no classical training whatsoever, says the 75-year-old English author, other than having failed Latin more times than anybody else in my school. In her version of the story, the narrator is Briseis, princess of the city Lyrnessus, who is given to Achilles as a trophy after he kills her brothers and husband. Ms. Barker compared the fate of Briseis and other captured Trojan women to that of the Kurdish-speaking Yazidi women who have been targeted by Islamic State militants in Iraq and Syria. It's all very quick for Briseis, she says. In the morning she's a princess, and by the evening she's a sex slave. The Silence of the Girls is one of several new books recasting Greek mythology, particularly the Iliad and the Odyssey, in ways that speak to the present. Madeline Miller's best-selling The Songs of Achilles drew on the Iliad to tell a gay love story between Achilles and his best friend Patroclus. Before that, Margaret Atwood's novella Penelopiad revisited the Odyssey from the perspective of Odysseus' left-behind wife, Penelope. Chigozie Obiama's novel, An Orchestra of Minorities, slated for release in January, retells the Odyssey from an immigrant perspective. I think there's something really fresh that happened to Pat's writing when she latched onto Briseis, says Ms. Barker's U.S. editor, Jerry Howard. She rented her material in a way that Homer could not have imagined himself doing. His culture and civilization did not give him the possibility of having that sort of perspective. The seed from Ms. Barker's latest novel was planted in an earlier one called Life Class, published in 2007. In it, she tells the story of a group of art students in London during World War I. In an early passage, one of them writes to her boyfriend after war has been declared. She comments on the fact that it's like the beginning of the Iliad, Ms. Barker says. She sees these old men looking very uneasy because they think their time is over. Young men are spouting a lot of nonsense they've read in the newspapers, and the women have gone completely silent. Her interest in the Iliad goes back even further to her Regeneration trilogy of World War I novels, which includes The Ghost Road. It's quite striking how the officer class in the First World War, on all sides, would be going into battle imbued with these ideals of heroism, which they got essentially from Greece and Rome, she says. But for Ms. Barker, writing about World War I and the Trojan War are two different things. There's no real evidence that the Trojan War ever happened, she says. It's not history, it's myth. So I deliberately introduce anachronisms like having my wounded Greek warriors sing English rugby songs, which of course you would never knowingly do writing historical fiction. The mystery of war is one that has consumed Miss Barker, who was born in northern England in 1943 and never met her father. He was a Royal Marine and died on a ship that was transporting Marines when it went down, she says. The Iliad fascinated her partly because of what she sees as Homer's tenderness toward his characters, the male ones at least. He had a very compassionate mind, she says. Nobody is allowed to die in his poetry without something personal being added, some information that distinguishes them at the moment they are killed. The Yankees who brought science to the barbecue world. A software engineer and a chef took on venerable Southern competitions and won, making history with the help of meat glue and the Frankengrill, by Ben Mesrick. Mr. Mesrick is the author of Bringing Down the House, the inside story of 6 MIT students who took Vegas for millions, and The Accidental Billionaires, the founding of Facebook, a tale of sex, money, genius, and betrayal. When you think barbecue, the locales that come to mind probably don't include Windsor, Connecticut. But for the thousands of enthusiasts who descended on this hilly, wooded enclave on the banks of the Connecticut River in late July for the 18th annual Harpoon Brewery Barbecue Festival, this slice of rural New England is central to what barbecue has become, a national pastime reaching beyond its celebrated Southern origins. Two leading characters in this shift have been the team of Boston chef Andy Husbands and pitmaster Chris Hart. They've participated in the festival every year since its launch, but their claim to fame in the barbecue world goes beyond bridging the divide between North and South. They've also been pioneers in bringing science to the fine art of slowly smoking delectably fatty meats. Competition barbecue began in the South. The Kansas City Barbecue Society, the largest competition league in the country, was founded in 1985 alongside a newsletter tracking local backyard competitions. It has since grown to include over 20,000 members who take part in 450 official competitions, culminating in the Kansas City Royal, held on a NASCAR racetrack on Labor Day each year. The Jack Daniel's World Championship Invitational Barbecue, based at the Jack Daniel's Distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee, brings together 90 international teams plying their trade in front of 25,000 fans. The Jack and the Royal, they're the Super Bowl and the World Series of barbecue, said Mr. Hart, fresh from the competition in Vermont. You don't have anything like that in New England. But the real question has become, is there great barbecue in the North? And the answer, more and more, is yes. Over the past 2 decades, Mr. Hart and Mr. Husbands and their IQ team have been crowned grand champion at over 30 competitive barbecue events across the country. More impressive, they were the first team from north of the Mason-Dixon line to take first place in an event at the Royal and to win the title of grand champion at the Jack. Southern barbecue is regionally focused, Mr. Hart continues. Some pit masters in eastern North Carolina only cook whole hogs with a specific sauce. In Texas Hill Country, some cook beef with salt and pepper because it's been cooked that way for 100 years. We don't have these traditions, Mr. Husbands adds, so for better or worse, we have a wide range of styles. Their first foray into competition barbecue was in October 1999 at an event called the Pig and Pepper Fest in Westborough, Massachusetts. Best friend since high school, Mr. Husbands was by then a top chef in Boston, and Mr. Hart was a software engineer and quality assurance scientist in the city's Route 128 tech corridor. They arrived armed with a Smoky Joe smoker, the sort of device you'd find on the shelf at Home Depot, and felt sure they could take home a prize. Instead, their ribs, pork, and brisket all landed in last place, but they were hooked. Mr. Hart spent the next weekend building a barbecue lab in his driveway, with computers arranged to keep track of the variables involved in creating perfect smoked meat. Fire temperature, air temperature, flipping, turning. Day after day, he cooked, took down the numbers, and then cooked again. He also began to peruse internet discussion boards. It was on one of these boards, the Smoke Ring, that he befriended a former food scientist named Joe Ames. Ames had been developing an injection made up of phosphates, hydrolytes, nitrates, bouillons, and other umami flavors. He called this injection FAB, for Food Additive Barbecue, and it could be tailored for pork, beef, or chicken. Mr. Hart discovered that the injection acted as a binding agent at the molecular level, allowing meat to keep its integrity and moisture and giving it extraordinary tenderness. Around the same time, Mr. Husbands began experimenting with an enzyme called transglutaminase, which people in the food industry call meat glue. Some restaurants use it to meld together, say, 2 cheap 4-ounce cuts of beef tenderloin to make a more expensive 8-ounce fillet. To his delight, he found that the enzyme could also bond chicken skin in place to ensure a perfect bite. A third innovation came by accident. While traveling to a barbecue competition in Maryland, the partners spent the weekend cooking and talking with an enthusiast named Shotgun Fred. It turned out that Fred Perkle, his real name, was a brilliant engineer who had founded a company called BBQ Guru. He created a complex system integrating a fan with a computer CPU, central processing unit, and it could be attached to a smoker. The fan stoked the smoker's fire, slowing down or speeding up, depending on the temperatures the CPU was reading from the ambient air. This Frankengrill, as they called it, looked like one of Doc's crazy contraptions from the movie Back to the Future. Wires and aluminum and a whirring fan blade, but it could maintain pinpoint perfect smoker temperatures for 14 hours or more. Though molecular food science and technical innovations, such as the computerized smoker, had been floating around for some time on the margins of the barbecue world, Mr. Hart and Mr. Husbands knew that very few people had attempted to use these tools in competition. Here, they thought, was a chance to attempt a scientific hack of the age-old tradition. In the winter of 2002, they launched what became a revolution in barbecue. Within months, their team had taken the Northeastern BBQ community by storm, winning nearly every competition they entered. Their innovations were controversial. Many traditional pit masters considered what they were doing akin to blasphemy. But the results were unassailable. IQ was arriving at events with techniques and ingredients that nobody else had, and they were dominating. After destroying their regional rivals, Mr. Hart and Mr. Husbands headed south, towing their Franken grill and enough meat to open a restaurant. And there they made BBQ history. In the decades since their big victory at the Jack in 2009, the techniques and ingredients they pioneered have become ubiquitous in the barbecue scene. Hitting the Harpoon Barbecue Competition in Vermont this year, Mr. Hart and Mr. Husbands were old-timers, toting families along with their Franken grill. Their tents were stuffed with children's toys and toddler-sized sleeping bags. But they were still competitors. Their skills won them grand champion in grilling, first place in chicken, and third place in BBQ overall. It might not be the same as winning at the Jack, Mr. Husbands mused, but of all the events we've done, this one feels like home. Historically Speaking by Amanda Foreman, The Struggle Before the Me Too. Since it began making headlines last year, the Me Too movement has expanded into a global rallying cry. The campaign has many facets, but the core message is clear. Women who are victims of sexual harassment and assault still face too many obstacles in their quest for justice. How much harder it was for women in earlier eras is illustrated perfectly by Emperor Constantine's 326 edict on rape and abduction. While condemning both, the law assumed that all rape victims deserved punishment for their failure to resist more forcefully. The best outcome for the victim was disinheritance from her parents' estate, the worst, death by burning. In the Middle Ages, a rape victim was more likely to be blamed than believed, unless she suffered death or dismemberment. That makes the case of the Englishwoman Isabella Plummet all the more remarkable. In 1292, Plummet went to her doctor, Ralph de Worgen, to be treated for a leg problem. He made her drink a sleeping drug and then proceeded to rape her while she was unconscious. It's likely that Worgen, a respected pillar of local society, had relied for years on the silence of his victims, but Plummet's eloquence in court undid him. He was found guilty and fined. The case was a landmark in medieval law, broadening the definition of rape to include non-consent through intoxication. But prejudice against the victims of sexual assault was slow to change. In Catholic Europe, notions of family honor and female reputation usually meant that the victims had to marry their rapists or be classed as ruined. This was the origin of the most famous case of the 17th century. In 1611, Artemisia Gentileschi and her father Orazio brought a suit in a Roman court against her art teacher, Agostino Tassi, for rape. Although Tassi had a previous criminal record, as a dishonored woman, it was Gentileschi who had to submit to torture to prove she was telling the truth. She endured an 8-month trial to see Tassi convicted and temporarily banished from Rome. Cleared by her local victory, Gentileschi refused to let the attack define her or determine the rest of her life. She is now regarded as one of the greatest artists of the Baroque era. One class of victims who had no voice and no legal recourse were free and enslaved black women in pre-Civil War America. Their stories make grim reading. Change was still far off in 1931 when the 18-year-old Rosa Parks, working as a housekeeper, was pounced on by her white employer. As she later recalled, he offered me a drink of whiskey, which I promptly and vehemently refused. He moved nearer to me and put his hand on my waist. She managed to fight him off, and in a larger sense, Parks never stopped fighting. She became a criminal investigator for the NAACP, helping black victims of white sexual assault to press charges. Rosa Parks is often referred to as the First Lady of Civil Rights in recognition of her famous protest on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama in '55. She should also be remembered as one of the unsung heroines in the long prehistory of Me Too. This concludes my reading of pieces from the Wall Street Journal for August 25th, 26th, and 27th. Have a great week, and please tune in next week.
You were just listening to the weekend review of the Wall Street Journal. We hope you enjoyed the program.
Each day in America, nearly 10,000 people turn 65 years old. With a population of approximately 15 million, New England lays claim to the largest percentage of baby boomers in the country. Many of these individuals are living with acquired disabilities, though they may not readily identify as having a disability, and they may not realize that their rights are protected by the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. Since 1990, the ADA has supported a broad range of individuals to live full, meaningful lives in the community. New England ADA Center works closely with those with rights and those with responsibilities to implement the ADA. For more information, contact us today at newenglandada.org, a project of the Institute for Human-Centered Design.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is Volunteer Judith, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Welcome to Enabled, the weekly program about people just like you who are dealing with issues of vision loss. The program is designed to encourage you through news you can use, inspirational stories, and interviews. I'm Nancy Zimmer, your host for Enabled. Thank you for joining me. I have a splash of color for you today, red, pink, and black, and it's all about the eyes. You'll hear about bleeding in the eye, the many forms of pink eye, and what you can do to speed the healing of a black eye. The information comes from the All About Vision website. First, we have an article just simply titled Hyphema, and that's spelled Hyphema, Hyphema. And this, once again, is from the All About Vision website. The article was written by Gary Heiting, who's a doctor of optometry. In this article, you'll hear a definition of what a hyphema is, what the symptoms are, causes, complications, treatment, and also prevention of a hyphema. The article starts, usually if you see blood in your eye, it's because a tiny blood vessel on the eye has broken open, causing a portion of or all of the white of your eye, the sclera, to appear bright red. This painless blood in the eye is called a subjunctival hemorrhage. And though they look scary, subjunctival hemorrhages are common and harmless and can be caused by something as simple as a sneeze or a cough. But there is a second type of bleeding in the front of the eye that's much more serious. This is called a hyphema. It requires immediate attention by your eye doctor. So what is a hyphema? A hyphema is bleeding or a broken blood vessel inside the eye that causes blood to collect in the anterior chamber of the eye. And this is the space between the cornea and the iris that's normally filled with a clear liquid called the aqueous humor. There's a picture accompanying this article, and it shows a layer of blood. You know where your iris is in your eye, the colored part, and then there's a pupil in the center of that? Well, this shows a layer of blood, a crescent-shaped layer of blood, sort of filling up that cavity, covering up the colored part of your eye. This is what they're talking about, filling the anterior chamber of the eye. It does not affect the white of the eye. So we're back to hyphema again. The severity of a hyphema is graded by how much blood accumulates in your eye. There's a grade 0, which is called a microhyphema. This is where there's no visible pooling of blood, but red blood cells can be seen within the anterior chamber upon microscopic examination. And then there is a grade 1 hyphema, which is pooling of the blood in less than the lower third of the anterior chamber. This is just the bottom part, barely covering the bottom part of the colored part of your eye. This is grade 1. Then we have grade 2, is when blood fills 1/3 to 1/2 of the anterior chamber. Grade 3 is when blood fills 1/2 to almost all the anterior chamber. And then, as you may have guessed, you have grade 4, which is a total filling of the anterior chamber with blood. If the blood is bright red, this is called a total hyphema. If it is dark red-black blood, this is sometimes called an 8-ball hyphema. In general, the higher the grade of the hyphema, the greater risk of vision loss and long-term damage to the eye. The dark red or black color of an 8-ball hyphema, which is the most dangerous type, is associated with decreased circulation of the aqueous humor and decreased oxygen in the anterior chamber of the eye. So what are some other symptoms of hyphema? In addition to the blood in the eye, the following symptoms usually are associated with hyphema. There are 4 of them. Blurry or distorted vision. Number 2, eye pain. Number 3, light sensitivity, which is also called photophobia, or a headache, another symptom of hyphema. Eye pain, sensitivity to light, and headache are especially likely to occur if a hyphema is causing increased intraocular pressure, which is another thing to worry about, the IOP. So the next question that's answered, what causes the bleeding in the eye? The most common cause of hyphema is trauma to the eye. This is why it's important to see your eye doctor immediately if you sustain an injury that causes a black eye. In some cases, a traumatic hyphema also can occur after eye surgery, including cataract surgery, but this is relatively rare. It's also possible for a hyphema to occur spontaneously, particularly among people who are taking blood thinners such as warfarin or aspirin, or have a blood clotting disorder like hemophilia. Diabetes can also increase the risk of a spontaneous hyphema, as can a tumor growing in the eye. This is called ocular melanoma. Next question from the website, is a hyphema serious, and are there complications? Usually, the blood that collects in the anterior chamber of the eye due to a hyphema will be reabsorbed by the body without permanent damage to the eye. But in some cases, clotting of this blood will clog or damage the structure in the periphery of the anterior chamber. This is the part that controls the normal outflow of the aqueous humor from the eye. And this can cause increased eye pressure that can lead to glaucoma and permanent vision loss. Also, in some cases, rebleeding can occur inside the eye after the initial eye injury that causes a traumatic hyphema. This new bleeding, which usually occurs within a few days after the injury, can be more severe and more dangerous than the initial bleeding. People with sickle cell anemia, a hereditary disease in which red blood cells are distorted into a crescent shape, or those who simply have a genetic trait for this disease, that sickle cell anemia, these people have an increased risk of eye damage from a hyphema. Next section is treatment. Depending on the severity of a hyphema and the associated risk factors, your eye doctor may recommend a combination of the following precautions and treatments for hyphema. Number 1, limited physical activity. Number 2, head elevation, including when you're sleeping. Number 3, wearing an eye shield. And number 4, frequent follow-up visits for a few weeks or even a few months. Number 5, pain medicine. Number 6, anti-inflammatory medicine. This can be either topical or oral. Or number 7, there are some other medications that they might use to treat a hyphema. In the case of a severe hyphema, surgery may be required. Do not use over-the-counter pain medications that contain aspirin or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are sometimes called NSAIDs, if you have a hyphema. These medications can increase the risk of rebleeding in the eye. Even if your eye feels fine and you don't notice vision problems, see an eye doctor immediately if you have eye trauma that could cause a hyphema. Make sure to attend all your follow-up visits that your doctor recommends. Also, routine eye exams are very important after having a hyphema, as your risk of elevated eye pressure and therefore glaucoma may be higher even years later. So you're asking, how can I prevent a hyphema? The best way to avoid a traumatic hyphema is to wear safety glasses or other protective eyewear whenever you are involved in potentially hazardous activities. Protective sports glasses should be worn when playing baseball, softball, racquetball, basketball, hockey, or other sports that pose a risk of trauma to the eyes. I would add lacrosse in there too. That seems to be a high risk for the eyes sport. The article continues and says, also be aware that sports like boxing significantly increase your risk of a traumatic hyphema. And if you participate even in paintball games, wear protective headgear that includes a clear, impact-resistant shield that fully protects your face and your eyes. The author of this article, Gary Heiting, a doctor of optometry, is senior editor of allaboutvision.com website. Dr. Heiting has more than 25 years of experience as an eye care provider, a health educator, and consultant in the eyewear industry. His special interests include contact lenses, nutrition, and preventive vision care. So next, from this same website, we have an article about subjunctival hemorrhage. This was mentioned just a few minutes ago. Subconjunctival hemorrhage by Brian Chu. He is also a doctor of optometry. In this article, you'll hear about what causes a broken blood vessel in the eye, that's another name for it, how to treat a broken blood vessel in the eye, and how long do these broken blood vessels take to heal. So we have what causes subjunctival hemorrhages. The picture accompanying this article shows a close-up of the eye, again with the colored part and the pupil, this time intact. It's just normal looking, but the white part that surrounds it is covered with reddish blood. That's what we're talking about in this section, subconjunctival hemorrhages. Although it's not always possible to identify the source of the problem, some potential causes of some subjunctival hemorrhage include the following 5. It can be caused by eye trauma, and this is cause of broken blood vessel. It can caused by a sudden increase in blood pressure that can result from heavy lifting, coughing, sneezing, laughing, or even constipation. A subconjunctival hemorrhage can be caused by aspirin or blood thinners such as warfarin, and one of the brand names for warfarin that you might be familiar with is Coumadin. The next possible cause, rarely, a blood clotting disorder or a vitamin K deficiency. Vitamin K aids the functioning of proteins necessary for blood clotting. And the 5th possible cause would be eye surgery, including LASIK and cataract surgery as well. Possible causes of some subjunctival hemorrhages. So how are these hemorrhages treated? Lubricant artificial tears can soothe the eyes, although eye drops cannot help repair the broken blood vessels. If you're taking aspirin or blood thinners, continue taking them unless your doctor specifically instructs you to do otherwise. Make sure not to rub your eye. This can increase the risk of rebleeding right after onset. This is similar to how a nosebleed is susceptible to rebleeding in the early stages. The next question that the article asks, how long do subconjunctival hemorrhages last? The answer, in most cases, it takes 7 to 10 days for a subconjunctival hemorrhage to resolve on its own. As the blood gradually disappears with time, the affected area can change color, just like a bruise. You know how colorful some of those bruises can be as they're healing. The next article is written by the same author that wrote the first article you heard. This article is called Pink Eye. We're switching from the red to the pink now. Pink eye, or conjunctivitis, we have in this article symptoms, treatments, and prevention. Pink eye is a term that may sound scary, but this common eye problem typically is easily treated and, with a few simple precautions, can often be avoided. Anyone can get pink eye, but preschoolers, school children, college students, teachers, and daycare workers are particularly at risk for the contagious types of pink eye because they work closely with others in the classroom. Here are the essential facts about pink eye or conjunctivitis that you should know. First of all, what is pink eye? Pink eye is also called conjunctivitis. It is an inflammation of the thin, clear covering of the white of the eye and the inside of the eyelids as well. This is referred to as the conjunctiva. Although the conjunctiva is transparent, it does contain blood vessels that overlay the sclera, the white part of the eye. Anything that triggers inflammation will cause these conjunctival blood vessels to dilate. And this is what causes red, bloodshot eyes. Conjunctivitis can have several causes, but many eye doctors use the term pink eye to refer only to viral conjunctivitis. This is a highly contagious infection caused by a variety of viruses. So we come to the next section, what causes pink eye? The primary types of conjunctivitis based on cause are, as you may have figured out, we've got three of them: viral, bacterial, and allergic. The first one, viral conjunctivitis. This is caused by a virus, like the common cold. This type of pink eye is very contagious, usually will clear up on its own within several days without medical treatment. The second type of conjunctivitis is bacterial. This is caused by bacteria. And this type of conjunctivitis can cause serious damage to the eye if it's left untreated. The third type is called allergic conjunctivitis. This is caused by eye irritants such as pollen or dust or animal dander among susceptible individuals. Allergic conjunctivitis may be seasonal like pollen or may flare up year-round like dust or pet dander. Symptoms of pink eye. Hey, no surprise here, the primary symptom of pink eye is an eye that has a pink appearance. Other symptoms of pink eye depend on the type of conjunctivitis that you have. If you have that first type of viral conjunctivitis, you will have watery, itchy eyes, sensitivity to light. One or both eyes can be affected. This is highly contagious and can be spread by coughing and sneezing. If you have the second type, bacterial conjunctivitis, you will notice a sticky yellow or greenish yellow discharge in the corner of your eye. In some cases, this discharge can be severe enough to cause the eyelids to be stuck together when you wake up. One or both eyes can be affected with this type as well. This is contagious, usually by direct contact with infected hands or with items that have touched the eye. The third kind, allergic conjunctivitis, you will have watery, burning, and itching eyes, often accompanied by stuffiness and a runny nose and light sensitivity. Both eyes are affected. This type is not contagious, the allergic conjunctivitis. Next topic, treatment of pink eye. As you would expect, the treatment of pink eye depends on the type that you have. Going back over those three types again, if you have viral conjunctivitis, in most cases this will run its course over a period of several days and no medical treatment is required or indicated. A home remedy of applying cold, wet washcloths to the eyes several times a day can relieve your symptoms. However, due to the highly contagious nature of this type of pink eye, be sure not to share this washcloth with others. If you have they determined you have bacterial conjunctivitis, your eye doctor will typically prescribe antibiotic eye drops or ointments for the treatment of bacterial conjunctivitis. If you have allergic conjunctivitis, allergy medications often can help prevent or shorten your bouts with allergic conjunctivitis. Sometimes these medications must be started before the allergy season or before an allergy flare-up begins. Ask your doctor for details about controlling allergic conjunctivitis. Often it can be difficult to tell what type of conjunctivitis you have by the symptoms alone, or if some other eye problem or underlying health conditions might be causing your symptoms. Conditions associated with conjunctivitis include other eye infections, dry eyes, and blepharitis. Also, bacterial conjunctivitis sometimes can lead to very serious eye problems, such as corneal ulcer, potentially causing permanent vision loss. For these reasons, any time you develop red, irritated eyes, you should call your optometrist or your ophthalmologist immediately, and they will get you in for a scheduled eye appointment as soon as they can. If you wear contact lenses, remove your lenses and wear only your glasses until your eye doctor has had a chance to examine your eyes. And if you choose to wear eyeglasses more frequently to reduce your risk of pink eye, Consider the high index lenses and an anti-reflective coating to make your glasses thinner, lighter, and more attractive, and this will also eliminate distracting reflections in the lenses. Also, consider these photochromic lenses. They can reduce light sensitivity associated with pink eye and also protect your eyes from harmful UV radiation and high-energy visible blue light, both indoors and outside. Photochromic lenses, I think those are the ones that darken automatically when you wear them outside. Not sure about that, but ask your optician or your eye doctor for details about all these things you can add to your eyeglasses to make them more useful to you. The last section of the article on pink eye is titled Pink Eye Prevention. Now that you know the basics about pink eye and other forms of conjunctivitis, what you can do to protect yourself and your kids from it. Here are some simple precautions you can take to significantly reduce your risk of getting pink eye. First of all, there's a lot of them here. First of all, now that you know number one, never share personal items such as washcloths, hand towels, or tissues. Number two, cover your nose and mouth when you're coughing or sneezing and avoid rubbing or touching your eyes. Never, ever share your colored contact lenses or special effect contacts with your friends. Number four, wash your hands frequently, especially when spending time at school or in other public places. Number five, keep a hand disinfectant, for an example, the Purell product. Keep it handy and use it frequently. A little note from me here, I'm a fanatic about keeping small jars of hand disinfectant Purell in my car. And then whenever I get back in the car, before I even touch the steering wheel or the start button, I've got my hands all sanitized. So keep it handy, hand disinfectant. Number six item, frequently clean surfaces such as countertops, bathroom vanities, faucet handles, and any phones that you might share with an appropriate antiseptic cleaner. I can add the TV remote to that list. They say in some cases that's the dirtiest thing in your whole house. The TV remote control. You can clean those surfaces with the disinfectant. Number seven, if you know you suffer from seasonal allergies, ask your doctor what can be done to minimize your symptoms before they begin. If you wear contacts, be sure you do follow your eye doctor's instructions for lens care and replacement. Use contact lens solutions properly, or consider switching to daily disposable contacts. When swimming, wear swim goggles to protect yourself from bacteria and other microorganisms in the water that can cause conjunctivitis. Before showering, use a hot tub or being in water before showering or before using a hot tub or being in any kind of water. Remove your contact lenses to avoid trapping bacteria between your eyes and the lenses. Despite these precautions, you or your child may still develop pink eye. If the problem is contagious pink eye, be considerate of others and do your part to keep the infection from spreading. If your child is affected, tell his or her teacher about the infection. Let the school know so that extra steps can be taken to sanitize the classroom or the daycare center. Also, keep your child at home until the contagious stage has passed. Your eye doctor can let you know when you or your child can again mingle with others without risk of spreading the contagious pink eye. Usually it takes about 3 to 5 days after the diagnosis. And remember, because a red or pink eye can be a symptom of many different types of eye problems, some of which can be quite serious, make sure you consult with your eye doctor. Don't take these things lightly at all. Next we have an article. We're getting near the end of the program. We have done pink eye and we've done red eyes. So now I have some thoughts for you about a black eye. The clinical term for a black eye is periorbital hematoma. Periorbital hematoma. This means it's a collection of blood, which is the hematoma part. This collection of blood is located in the tissues around, not inside the eye. And there we get the term periorbital. So we have the black eye, the periorbital hematoma. You might also hear it called a shiner. Some dictionaries say the term shiner originated possibly because the skin overlaying a black eye might appear shiny. But another, I think it's a more interesting theory, is that a black eye looks like a person had applied a smudge of black or black shoe polish around the eye to make it shiny. Shoe black. Could be. Next section, how to get rid of a black eye. While there is no magic cure to get rid of a black eye overnight, here are a number of things that may help speed up the healing process so your eye can look and feel better. Start with cold. Apply that bag of frozen peas. This is a good idea too, I hadn't heard of this one. A chilled spoon or some other method to lower the temperature of the area around the eye as soon as possible after the injury, and then use this frequently thereafter for the first 24 hours. The bag of frozen peas I'd heard about, but the chilled spoon is a great way to get a small cold spot in there right where you need it, right around the eye, to cool the area down. First 24 hours, do the cold thing. Next, switch to warm. After a day, 24 hours of applying cold packs or other cold things like that spoon, try gently applying warm, not hot, compresses to your black eye. This will increase the blood flow to the area to facilitate healing. Next, another idea. Gently massage the area surrounding the bruise, not the black eye itself. Massage the area around the bruise in the days following the injury. This may help activate the lymphatic system near the bruise and speed up the healing process. Hey, here's one I can go for. Snack on pineapple. This tropical fruit contains a mixture of enzymes that reduce inflammation and will speed healing, which may help your shiner go away fast. Vitamin C. Though vitamin C may do more to reduce how easily you bruise by strengthening blood vessels, reducing their tendency to leak after blunt trauma, vitamin C may also help speed the healing of your black eye. Then there's something called bilberry extract. This is a relative of blueberry and cranberry. Bilberry contains potent antioxidants that may help reduce or eliminate bruising by increasing the effectiveness of your vitamin C and by strengthening your capillaries. You likely will notice the color of your black eye will change as it heals. Here we go. Shades of purple, blue, even green or yellow are not uncommon. Remember, it is a bruise. In most cases, you will see noticeable improvement in the appearance of your black eye within a week. Now, all information for today's program came from the website called www.allaboutvision.com. It is an excellent website full of all kinds of good information. I frequently go to it for my own information as well. Well, to end today's colorful program, I have a quote for you. Color can speak to the soul in 1,000 different ways. This was said by Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wills Wilde. You probably know him simply as Oscar Wilde. He's an Irish poet and playwright. After writing in different forms throughout the 1880s, he became one of London's most popular playwrights in the early 1890s. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great and colorful week. You've been listening to Enabled, a production of WXXI Reach Out Radio in Rochester, New York. Our technical director is Maureen Rich, and I'm Nancy Zimmer. I hope you'll join me again next week for more updates and information and encouraging stories. If you'd like to hear this program again, you can listen to it at our website, wxxi.org.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Jay Clare as he presents the book Six Kill by Robert B. Parker. A bad boy movie star named Jumbo pushes the limits of his reputation when he's accused of rape and murder. When the Boston PD calls on Spencer, he meets Jumbo's young bodyguard, Six Kill, and the two form an unlikely alliance. It's a high-profile case for Spencer, but the Hollywood secrets he uncovers are sordidly unsavory, and not just those of the accused. 6 Kill by Robert B. Parker will air for 9 episodes on the Pure Fiction Book Hour beginning September 4th and ending September 14th.
Take a look under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. There's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so into anymore. A perfectly good laptop that hasn't sat in your lap in months. And even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really have both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as a group. Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed, and they're the stuff inside your stuff. Even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs. And isn't that worth parting with the leftover guitar from your 80s cover band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is volunteer reader Melanie Donovan, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
We invite you now to listen to the Talking Information Center for a presentation of Wired Magazine. We hope you'll enjoy this program.
From Wired Magazine, what's the deal? Home selling apps offer quick cash. If you put your house up for sale, know that it'll typically be on the market for about a month before you get an offer. An eternity when you're hosting revolving door showings, paying 2 mortgages, or trying to move in a hurry. Now, a new category of companies called iBuyers wants to slash that time span to 3 days or less. Think of them as house flippers that work for you. Sellers fill out an online questionnaire, and an iBuyer uses proprietary modeling to assess the home's value. The company then makes an all-cash offer within 72 hours, sight unseen. The iBuyer keeps a 6 to 10% commission off the price. They make light renovations and relist the house at a markup. Home buyers can browse and make an offer via app. The field's forerunner is Open Door, which is already in 12 markets and aims to expand to 20 by year's end. In June, the startup raised $325 million from investors like Lennar, the nation's largest home builder, and VC firm General Atlantic, bringing its value to $2 billion. Meanwhile, competitor OfferPad has raised a total of $410 million. Even traditional listings giants are copying the business model with programs like Redfin Now and Zillow's Instant Offers. While these startups' fees may skim thousands from a home seller's profit, for harried movers, the prospect of a 2-day turnaround and cash in hand may be worth it. Some iBuyers are even offering to hire your movers for you. Just open your wallet and get out of the way. Human Parasites, How Social Media Zombifies You, by staff writer Matt Simon, whose new book, Plight of the Living Dead, comes out in October. You've heard that social media is screwing with your brain. Maybe you even read about it on social media. So meta, so messed up. The neurochemical culprit, dopamine, spikes when you like and get liked, share and are shared. You've probably also heard scientists compare the affliction to drug or alcohol addiction. That's fair. The same part of the brain lights up. Scroll, scroll, scroll. It's a phenomenon now so pervasive that it's got a name. Zombie scrolling syndrome. The security company McAfee coined the phrase in 2016. We are the undead of lore, shambling through the world, moaning and groaning with half-closed eyes. I'd like to be able to tell you this is a fantastical bit of exaggeration, that we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. I can do no such thing. The analogy, it turns out, has legs. Consider parasites. An astonishing number of them exist in nature, from worms to wasps, and some have the power of mind control, or, said another way, zombification. And these fiends are doing it in, gulp, ways that bring to mind social media. Take the jewel wasp. She grabs a cockroach twice her size and drives her stringer through the poor thing's neck and into its head, feeling around the brain before injecting non-lethal venom in 2 precise spots. Okay, not quite like Facebook, but stay with me. Post-surgery, the cockroach just keeps grooming itself while the wasp drags it into a burrow by its antenna. The wasp then lays an egg on the cockroach's legs, seals the tomb, and goes about her life. In a few days, the wasp egg hatches into a larva that latches onto the roach and drinks its bodily fluids. Again, the bug doesn't complain, it's not paralyzed, it's fully capable of breaking out of its prison, but the roach doesn't. As the fluids run dry, the larva burrows into the body to eat the organs one by one, hollowing out the roach's abdomen while the thing is still alive. Read, undead. Eventually, it emerges as an adult wasp, finally killing its host. According to researchers, the wasp's secret appears to be, wait for it, dopamine. The wasp loads up its venom with the neurotransmitter, and that cocktail alters the roach's behavior in ways scientists are only beginning to understand. Weirdly, in cockroaches and other creatures, dopamine regulates grooming, hence the insect's fanatical insistence on cleaning itself instead of running for its life. Not like humans would ever primp for a totally natural and spontaneous selfie. The weapon of choice for other zombifiers is serotonin, another well-studied neurotransmitter. There's a tiny worm, for instance, that begins life in the stomach of crustaceans called amphipods. Then the worm finds itself with a problem. To live, it has to get into the stomach of a bird, which means it needs its host to get noticed. Complicating things, fish love to eat amphipods. That's bad for our protagonist. In a fish belly, the worm will dissolve. So the worm mind controls its crustacean to spend more time at the pond's surface, where it's likelier to draw the attention of birds. That little baby worm can even change its host's color to a more conspicuous hue. The worm itself isn't releasing serotonin. Somehow, it's short-circuiting the amphipod's nervous system to overproduce the chemical. Researchers think this may cause the victim to mistake light for darkness. Instead of diving into the safety of the murky depths, it ascends to the surface and to death from above. Whatever their strategy, zombifying parasites are hacking biology, and so with their A/B tested keep you perma-scrolling tactics are the titans of social media. Like any living creature, we are manipulable. Our brains are chemical soups, programmed to need and be needed. Prehistorically, it's what helped us stick together to not get eaten. It was clearly adaptive to be so sensitive to social stimuli, says UCLA psychologist Patricia Greenfield. But evolution never expected that we would be getting social stimuli from people we don't even know. We're not only vulnerable, in other words, we also lack defenses. There's a good reason that more than half the organisms on Earth are parasites. If you live off the nutrients and energy of someone else, you don't have to run around and hunt for yourself. It's a hell of an effective strategy. And one thing is clear, you don't want to be the hunted. But there might be hope. Not every parasitic relationship ends in death. Take it from crickets. All around the world, thread-like critters called horsehair worms grow in the bellies of crickets, feeding on their juices. Once the worms get big enough, they persuade their host to do the unthinkable, leap into a stream or pond and risk drowning or death by fish. In the water, the worm makes its move, drilling through the cricket's belly and swimming away to find fellow worms to mate with. Amazingly, the cricket can survive a parasite many times its length, squirming out of its body, provided it swims to shore afterward. Scientists know the horsehair worms are releasing a chemical concoction that instructs the crickets to go full kamikaze. But in this case, the cricket does well by putting its life in danger and jumping in the drink. If it can't get rid of the worm, the body snatcher will die in its belly and kill its hosts. Biologists call this, no joke, the mafia hypothesis. Give in to the bullying or die. So we don't have to be the cockroach or the amphipod, we can be the cricket, with the power to purge our systems of zombifying parasites. When you uninstall Facebook on your phone or delete your Instagram account, you're taking a leap into that pond. You might belly flop, but it's unlikely you'll drown, and you won't get eaten by a fish. Probably. Paleovision, How Geologists See, by Marcia Bjornrud, a professor of geology at Lawrence University. Her book, Timefulness, comes out this month. It's an abnormally hot day in September, and I'm standing in a cattail marsh in eastern Wisconsin, trying to change the way my students view the world. They're all distracted by the heat, homesickness, or the fact that they've lost a phone signal. The guys on the university hockey team are snickering about something. I've brought them here in the first week of our introductory geology course to investigate a mystery. Just in front of us, rising improbably from the flat expanse of the marsh, is a hill. About 50 feet high and twice as wide, it is made up of layers of loose sand and stones of many types. As we climb to the top, we can see that the hill snakes across the landscape like an upside-down river valley. My question for the students is, how did it form? Geology has a PR problem. People associate it with musty museum collections and avaricious mining companies. As I hope my students will learn, though, looking at the planet through a geologic lens is something like strapping on an augmented reality headset. It invites you, from your vantage point in the present, to summon up Earth's deep past and far future, to see these parallel worlds with your own eyes like digital overlays. Not far from the marsh, for instance, is a limestone quarry. The slabs of gray rock seem unchanging now, but your headset reveals that they were once a coral reef in an inland sea. Below the former reef is a layer of golden sandstone, whose perfectly round quartz grains, pounded smooth by the ancient surf, speak of a beach that existed long before life came ashore. There are AR tools for mapping and modeling, but so far none is as immersive as geologic insight. From the crest of the Serpentine Hill, I coax the students into posing hypotheses about its origin. They try various overlays. Was there a river here once? That would account for the sinuous form, but doesn't explain why it's a ridge, not a valley. Okay, how about a glacial deposit? That explains the variety of stones, but a bulldozing ice mass doesn't leave behind neat layers. The students are getting curious, drawn into the mystery, a little aggravated by it. Suddenly, someone has a crazy idea. Maybe this whole area used to be under ice, and maybe we're standing in the dried-up bed of a river that flowed in a tunnel under the ice. The headsets are working now. We're just 20 minutes from campus, but we're half a mile under a Pleistocene glacier. The mood on the bus back to campus is buoyant. We've connected with something old, wild, and real. Most humans are chronophobes. We worry about where the time has gone, whether we're spending it wisely, how much of it we have left. Geology puts things in temporal perspective. It reminds us that, while the current version of the world is ephemeral, it's also intimately connected to countless others, long past and still to come. If I'm successful, my students will finish the class seeing backstories everywhere in nature, their sense of place and time on this old earth irrevocably altered. Mission Controller, Disabled Gamers Get a Power-Up, by Laura Parker, author of Power Play, How Video Games Can Save the World. The FedEx package arrived at Mark Bartlett's home in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia on Christmas Eve 2016. He opened the box and gingerly pulled out a sleek black and white device with two large buttons, a prototype for the new Xbox Adaptive Controller. He touched the logo and tears came to his eyes. I couldn't believe it, Bartlett tells me. I said to myself, we fucking did it. Bartlett, 44, is a disabled Air Force veteran. He injured his spinal cord in 1996 at Andrews Air Base in Maryland. He can walk, but he suffers from chronic pain. One evening in 2004, he was at home playing the multiplayer game EverQuest 2 with a friend in Nevada who has MS. Suddenly, her right hand just stopped working, Bartlett recalls. She didn't regain mobility for months. Deeply affected by the experience, Bartlett started emailing and calling game companies to ask about modified controllers and other assistive tech. What he learned was discouraging. Few major gaming companies had even considered developing consoles for players with restricted movement. Later that year, Bartlett founded Able Gamers, an organization that advocates for accessible gaming options. Disabled gamers are a very real, very vocal demographic. Able Gamers estimates that there are more than 30 million of them in the U.S. But across all systems, video game controllers are configured more or less the same: 2 thumbsticks, a D-pad, and a slew of buttons. Increasingly complex gameplay, think popular shooters like Call of Duty or fast-paced action games like Assassin's Creed, often necessitate rapid-fire button combinations like tapping one repeatedly while pressing another or moving both thumbsticks simultaneously. Motion controls, like those required for Nintendo's upcoming Pokemon Let's Go games, are another challenge altogether. For years, the disabled gamer community has compensated with switches, devices that allow people with limited mobility to control a game using different parts of their body, like their head, foot, or mouth. But switches, typically made by medical supply companies, can be expensive, up to $200 a piece, and clunky. A lot of them are comically large or look like a medical device, says Aaron Mustin-Fursh, an occupational therapist who helps patients with spinal cord and brain injuries at Craig Hospital's Tech Lab in Colorado. Other times, players make do however they can. Michael Philip Begum is a 30-year-old gamer in Brownsville, Texas. He has a condition that prevents his muscles from growing, hindering physical activity. But for 7 years he's been playing Street Fighter competitively under the name Broly Legs, moving a standard controller using his cheeks and tongue. Until the rise of social media, developers were clueless about how gamers with disabilities struggled, he says. It was simply a choice we had to make. Can we play it? He says. If we couldn't, we tried another game. In 2010, Congress passed the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act, which requires companies to make laptops, tablets, smartphones, gaming consoles, and other tech that can be used by people with disabilities. Though the act has a very narrow focus, I think that it was a catalyst in prompting game makers to rethink their existing franchises, Bartlett says. The industry successfully lobbied the FCC for an extension. The new deadline is the end of this year. In 2015, Sony added new accessibility settings to its PlayStation 4, including text-to-speech, closed captions, zoom, enlarged or bold text, and inverted colors. In August 2016, EA released one of its biggest sports titles, Madden 17, with expanded accessibility features, such as colorblind support and brightness and contrast settings. In July 2016, Xbox reached out to Bartlett with an idea that had emerged from an internal hackathon. Microsoft wanted to create a video game controller from scratch for people with limited mobility. Through Able Gamers, Microsoft staffers asked disabled players a barrage of questions about using controllers and switches. The gamers weighed in with critiques on early product sketches and tested out prototypes with their switches. The Xbox Adaptive Controller, which will be released this month for $100, works with all titles on Xbox One and Windows 10 and can be customized for each game via app. Designed for gamers with restricted mobility, including those with cerebral palsy and spinal cord injuries, the device is compatible with most existing switches. Players can plug in foot pedals, for example, if they can't use their hands, or a quad stick, which lets quadriplegic players sip or puff with their mouth to control movement on screen. The controller also introduces shift mode, which allows the player to change a button's function mid-game, so a button might control jump in one section and shoot in another. The Xbox controller represents a small victory for disabled gamers, but it's not a Swiss Army knife that will help everyone, Bartlett says. Gamers with visual impairments in particular may be disappointed by the controller's lack of rumble packs, those vibrating devices that alert players when, say, they're near a clue. Bartlett is also pushing for software improvements in games, adding features like rich soundscapes and resizable text. In the meantime, the Adaptive Controller's upcoming release has other game companies scrambling to introduce their own accessible hardware. Nintendo is way behind, Bartlett says. Earlier this year, PlayStation senior producer Sam Thompson gave a 2-hour presentation to some of Sony's game developers about UX design for disabled players, from sightless gameplay prototypes to nonverbal support. This year we've been contacted by all the big studios, Bartlett says. The things they're asking go far beyond what the Accessibility Act requires. They're finally looking to make games not only compliant, but truly enjoyable by people with disabilities. Still, despite the recent groundswell, Bartlett harbors no illusions. We know what companies want. Business, he says. A new customer base of more than 30 million gamers may give game developers the push they need. And now something from the angry nerd, Lauren Morrow. Too fast, I'm furious. Like you, like every delirious commuter, I savor podcasts. They're a reprieve from my dead-eyed Twitter scroll. But unlike you, I don't stress about missing an episode or 4. In fact, I find comfort in the medium's buffet of excess. Therefore, I reserve special scorn for so-called podfasters, the tweakers who listen at 1.5, 2 times, even 3 times speed. I see you over there, oblivious to the world, AirPods stuffed in your ear holes, as, Joey Chestnut style, you inhale content. Scads of apps aid you in this frantic endeavor. Right speed accelerates the pace every 2 minutes, turning Sarah Koenig's soothing timbre into a chittery titter, while Overcast algorithmically cleaves thoughtful pauses from conversations. Google's app offers no less than 16 speeds. My effing bike only has 5. Listen to me, chipmunks. Listen. Podcasting is an art. Every choice subtle and intentional. You think Roman Mars exhales wistfully just so on a whim? When you blow through an episode, you're gutting the experience of its hard-won nuance and cadence. Also, you're wrong. Speed listeners think they're self-optimizing, but science shows comprehension flies off the rails at 2 times and crashes and burns at 3 times. Ever wonder what happened to comfortable silences? Why small talk makes you want to pass out? Why the ring of your phone triggers a Pavlovian punching of the ignore button? Blame the relentless babble that's blasting your brain to mush. Slow Software, in Praise of Friction by Clive Thompson. Online commerce has made it easier than ever to shop, right? Maybe too easy. A recent study by comparison shopping site Finder revealed that more than 88% of Americans admitted to spontaneous impulse buying online, blowing an average of $81.75 each time we lose control. Clothes, video games, concert tickets, 1 in 5 of us succumb weekly. Millennials do it the most. The main emotion that people feel after this impulsive spending is regret, says Jennifer McDermott, a consumer advocate for Finder. While it's not an impartial estimate, Finder calculates that we spend more than $17 billion on impulse buys, which is a lot of regret. So McDermott's team decided to help us rein in our impulses. They created Icebox, a Chrome plugin that replaces the buy button on 20 well-known e-commerce sites with the blue button labeled Put It on Ice. Hit it and your item goes into a queue, and a week or so later Icebox asks if you still want to buy it. In essence, it forces you to stop and ponder, do I really need this widget? Odds are you don't. This is a lovely example of what I've come to think of as friction engineering, software that's designed not to speed us up but to slow us down. It's a principle that inverts everything we know about why software exists. Most of the time, coders labor to increase our throughput by reducing friction. Speed often improves life, but the recent techlash has been driven in a fundamental way by the grim side effects of this acceleration. Facebook's newsfeed made it frictionlessly easy to spread misinformation. Twitter let trolls engage in coordinated harassment campaigns. Amazon enticed me to buy crap I manifestly don't need and is helping to denude towns of local businesses. In contrast, inserting friction can bring intriguing wins. Consider the case of Nextdoor, the site that lets real-life neighbors create online hubs to talk to one another. The service includes a crime reporting tool that made it easy to report suspicious activity. The problem was that jittery residents would too often write a racist alert whenever any black person so much as walked past their house. So Nextdoor redesigned the crime reporting tool to slow things down. Filing a report now requires listing specific details, what the suspicious person was wearing, their age, their actions. Using the tool suddenly involved more work. It helped. Nextdoor says racial profiling in its crime section dropped dramatically. Others have tried to inject friction into the hummingbird metabolism of social media. Entrepreneur Andrew Golis created this, an app used to post only one link a day. The goal, he tells me, was to encourage high-quality curation, to create something that was like showing off your bookshelf, the things you really love. What unifies these experiments is that they encourage deliberation. Why am I buying this? Why am I reporting this, quote, suspicious incident? Friction engineering ought to be taught in computer science and design schools everywhere. It's a Sisyphean battle, I admit. Offered the choice, we nearly always opt for convenience. Golis's This app died after less than 2 years of gathering only a small but devoted following. Icebox is brilliant, but hasn't yet taken off. Socratic deliberation improves our lives, but man, what a pain. It's certainly possible to slow our software, and thereby ourselves, but it'll happen only when we become too unsettled by the speed of our journey. Benchmark. Connect the blocks. A Danish woodworker's bet on a new manufacturing process gave us the world's most famous brick by Jonathan Keats. When Ole Kirk Christensen imported a newfangled contraption called a plastic injection molding machine to Denmark in 1946, people thought he'd lost his mind. Kirk Christensen was a master carpenter who made wooden toys sold under the brand name Lego, abbreviated from Leg Godt, Danish for play well. The machine cost nearly 7% of the company's annual revenue, but Kirk Christensen reckoned there was no limit to what he could manufacture with the new technology. He could even redesign old-fashioned building blocks so that they wouldn't topple over. After making modest progress with interlocking indentations, a concept borrowed from another toy manufacturer, Ole's son, Gottfried, set to work on a mechanism for binding blocks together. After years of trial and error, he perfected the stud-and-tube coupling system that defines Lego to this day. The system required the molding process to be accurate to within 0.005 millimeters. Gottfried filed for a patent the year Ole died. Countless variations on the form followed over the decades, from roof tiles to Jedi weaponry, all of which can click with bricks from the Eisenhower era. Some 700 billion Lego pieces later, the result is a toy that never gets old. Wavepoints, a spiky space simulator, by Laura Melanie. The electric blue chamber looks like a crowd of punk mohawks or the Night King's jagged skull. In fact, this 4,306 square foot room is where antennas are torture tested before being launched into space. Called the Hybrid European Radio Frequency and Antenna Test Zone, or HERTZ, it's located in Noordwijk, Netherlands. The 33-foot-high steel walls are studded with 18-inch foam pyramids that block external electromagnetic interference. 2 tests are performed here. One measures radio waves from omnidirectional antennas, like the type rovers use to communicate with orbiters. Another calibrates highly directional antennas, which spacecraft use to send data to Earth. Engineers bounce radio waves between an antenna and giant carbon reflectors to simulate signals hurtling at light speed through 500 million miles of space. Next up, Hertz will test a radar antenna that'll search for liquid oceans during the 2022 Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer mission. If everything checks out, the system will leave this bristly cocoon for the vast wilderness of deep space.
Thank you for listening to the Talking Information Center's presentation of Wired Magazine. If you would like to listen to the program again at your leisure, please visit ticnetwork.org.
This announcement is brought to you by PEC TV.
Come to New England Village's Memory Cafe at 664 School Street in Pembroke. The Memory Cafe hosts a monthly gathering where people with memory loss and their companions can come together to make new friends, have some fun, and support one another. A sing-along and art project will be included. Memory Cafe will host its monthly meetings on the last Thursday of the month from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Advance registration is required by calling 830-4230. Participants must be accompanied by a family member or caregiver. An optional complimentary lunch is available at 11:30 a.m. for anyone signed up for the Memory Cafe. This Memory Cafe is brought to you by New England Village in partnership with the Center for Active Living. For more information or to register, call 508-830-4230. That's 508-830-4230.
Hey, Russell Wilson here, and I know how important exercise is.
It's essential. It's essential.
With Play 60, United Way and the NFL are helping kids stay active and play at least 60 minutes a day.
Healthy kids. Healthy kids.
But what this place needs is you. To donate or volunteer, go to unitedway.org/play60 because great things happen when we live united.
Donate.
Are you guys going to do that every time?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
Hi, this is Volunteer Judith, broadcasting from Marshfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
Hello, good morning, and welcome to AM Update here on the Talking Information Center. It's Tuesday, September 4th, primary day here in Massachusetts, and my name is John. Let's begin our program, as we always do, with Andrew LaPointe's Commission Commuter Update. And this morning, he writes, on the Red Line, shuttle buses replacing Red Line service between North Quincy and Braintree stations, Mondays through Thursdays, 9 p.m. through end of service. These evening shuttles are scheduled to occur every Monday through Thursday nights through September 27th to allow for work at both Wollaston and Quincy Center stations. All shuttle bus stops are accessible for persons with disabilities. Regularly scheduled service will resume at the start of service the following day. Bus Route 18, experiencing delays up to 15 minutes due to a disabled bus. Route 505, experiencing delays up to 20 minutes. As a reminder, bus schedules have changed as of September 2nd. Please check with the MBTA to obtain the new schedules, as they include many changes to most buses and have changes that differ from each other. A stop closure notification. Summer Street at Melcher Street bus stop is temporarily closed due to construction. Route 119 will begin service to and from Tomasello Way on Sunday, September 2nd. On the commuter rail lines, a service change notice, weekends September 8th through October 21st. The Greenbush, Middleborough, and Kingston lines will originate and terminate at Braintree Station due to demolition of the Quincy Center garage. Due to construction September 4th through 7th, the pedestrian pathway at Rose Wharf in front of the Hingham Ferry will temporarily change. Please follow directional signage in the area and add additional time to get to and from the ferry. Davis Escalator 337, College Ave, Tilsaw Street, is unavailable due to maintenance. Porter Escalator 511, Ashmont and Braintree Platform to paid lobby, unavailable due to maintenance. North Station Escalator 391, Causeway Street to lobby, unavailable due to maintenance. Forest Hills Escalator 128, Lower Busway, South to Upper Lobby, is unavailable due to maintenance. And with that, let's check in with Andrew J. LaPointe himself. He's standing by in Salem right now with your Safe Disabled Traveler Notebook. Andrew, good morning.
Good morning, John, and to our TIC listeners.
This is Andrew J. LaPointe with the Safe Disabled Travel Notebook for today, Tuesday, September 4th. Yep, this is September 4th, 2018. Well, today, just don't forget to get out to vote. This is, an opportunity to cast your vote to, choose who you wish to have serve us, serve you. Just a reminder that, for people who are blind and, visually impaired and with other disabilities, you do have an accessible voting machine, so take advantage of it. If you have any problems, there will be, help at the polls, the warden, and there are people that are specially trained to help with situations that pop up there. And if you have any questions, you can also call the city clerk's office at 978-619-5610. Of course, that's for Salem only, but everybody has a city clerk, and all the polling locations have accessible voting machines. So just make sure you go out there and vote. If you don't know your polling location, do call the. You can find it on the web, or you can call the city clerk's office of your city. So take advantage of that. Today we have a tree service. They're going to be removing a good-sized tree there on Webb Street. That's between Boardman and Andrew Street off of Webb. Well, it's on Webb, but it's right between Boardman and Andrew Street. And, of course, Webb runs between Bridge Street, crosses by Collins Cove, and ends on right by the Ziggy's Donut Shop. Okay, so just keep in mind that one of the big trees will be coming down. And it's, you'll need assistance to get around if you're using Webb Street. But you can also use Pleasant Street, which runs parallel to Webb, and to gain access to either Boardman or Andrew or Forrester or Washington Square East, or any of those areas too. So you can keep that in mind if you just want to avoid any hassle there with this tree removal. LEC Civil is going to be setting up shop at Washington at Dodge. Okay, so that's right where Starbucks Coffee is, and that's where that new building that's going to be up there, being erected. And that's right near Mill Hill, and by the Washington Street side there, and Raleigh Plaza, and all that. So just use caution in that area. We don't expect them to be doing too much today, but they will be doing some activity where it could alter some of the navigating skills that you have getting around the area. But safety officers will be on site to guide you around any of the obstacles or harm's way. Also, with that said, they are having difficult times to fill some of these detail officer spots. So, but something like this that would make it a priority. These areas here, because of the they need detail officers at the polling locations. There's quite a few of them here in Salem. They will have difficulty filling some of those spots, but the more like the tree service will probably have a detail officer there because of the potential harm's way and all that. So keep that in mind. Okay, BMC will be, setting up some of those catch basins. Now, that might be a place where they may not have a detail officer if they can't fill up the spots. But it is very noisy. We don't know where they're going to be around the city, but they are going to be doing catch basins, a little here and there and everywhere. So if you run across any loud vehicle, vacuum type of vehicles, it may be right where BMC is working, but it's right at the curbside, and so if you're walking on the walkways, that's not going to be too much of a problem. It's just going to you take away your hearing if you're blind or visually impaired to be able to make good judgment calls with the mobility skills. Just keep that in mind. C. Norton is again going to be Cloverdale off of Marlborough Road, and that's they should be winding down with all this stuff because they've been there for quite a while. I knew when they were around Raymond years ago, it did take about 2 weeks, so this is a little bit more than 2 weeks. But they will be at Cloverdale at Marlborough Road, and they are returning to Victory Road, which is right at Memorial Drive in Trapello Lane, which is more toward the other end, down toward the Willows. But they're both by Memorial Drive. So, if you have any questions, give me a call, Andrew J. LaPointe, at 978-745-4289. Wishing you the best for today. It's supposed to be muggy again today, but try to get out there and vote. Bring plenty of refreshing water for your four-legged friend if you have one, CNI dog or service animal, and for yourself. And just enjoy the day. Take care, and we'll speak with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andrew. Hopefully you enjoyed your long holiday weekend. Good to have you back on this Tuesday. Let's take a look at the Boston Globe and Boston Herald front page this morning. Front page of the Globe dated Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. We have Bedford VA nursing site, 1 star, plenty of questions. Kin of residents talk of bed sores, neglect, and possible abuses. Also, final primary pitches and pleas. Capuano and Presley tilt called bellwether, dozens of candidates in last push for voters. Below the fold, in this election year, texts are hot, TV ads are not, and no syllabus for students with chronic ailments. And finally, part of cranberry crop may be dumped. Growers seeking okay to cut supplies so prices will rise. Those stories and more in today's Boston Globe. Front page of the Herald this morning. Get out there and vote. Join Herald Radio for primary results and analysis starting at 6 p.m. And out of step, Boston Police Department arrest reports show ankle bracelets don't stop crime. And in the sports pages, a hot second. Streaking, Kinsler leads Sox to rout of Braves. So those stories and more in today's local newspaper coverage. TIC's coverage gets underway this morning at 8 o'clock with the Wall Street Journal. 9 o'clock we have the Boston Globe, 10 o'clock the Boston Herald, and 11 o'clock this morning today's reading of the Washington Post. And don't forget, starting on September 17th, TIC begins a brand new program schedule featuring newspapers covering all the cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That begins on September 17th here on TIC, and if you'd like a copy of that new schedule, call us here at TIC after 8:30 this morning, and we can mail that out to you at no charge to you. Again, my name is John Shea. You're listening to AM Update here on the Talking Information Center. Today is Tuesday, the 4th of September, 2018. And let's pause right now for your weather forecast and your Profile America. Here's a look at the weather forecast from the National Weather Service. Sunny and hot today, temperatures in the mid-80s. For tonight, partly cloudy, temperatures in the upper 60s. And Wednesday, mostly sunny, temperatures back up into the mid-80s. Stay tuned for more coming your way next on the Talking Information Center.
Profile America, Tuesday, September 4th. Simple amateur photography, even selfies, should the idea have occurred, became a possibility for the American public 130 years ago. On this date in 1888, George Eastman received a patent for the first camera to use dry, flexible roll film. Eastman's handheld camera, the first to use the brand name Kodak, had enough film on a roll to take 100 exposures. When the roll was finished, the camera was returned to the factory for unloading, developing, and reloading. Now, most cameras are digital, but photographic film and related products still have a market presence. Manufacturing such film, plates, paper, and processing chemicals is a $5.5 billion a year business. You can find more facts about America's people, places, and economy from the American Community Survey at census.gov.
This announcement brought to you from PAC TV.
The Plymouth Public Library's Outreach and Senior Services Department provides services and collections of interest to older adults, such as large print fiction and nonfiction books, as well as audiobooks. Outreach also provides services to individuals who would otherwise not have access to library materials, such as people who are homebound, institutionalized, or who have a physical or mental disability. Outreach services include books by mail, deposit collections of regular and large print books, educational and recreational programs, recorded books, and reference assistance. Currently, 4 local nursing facilities partake in the deposit collection program, which brings the library to the residents by fulfilling specific requests, in addition to a variety of fiction and nonfiction titles each month. The large print collection includes New York Times bestsellers, inspirational reads, local interest and nonfiction, mysteries, romance, and biographies. With a collection of over 2,000 audiobooks, patrons with limited sight or who are visually impaired can enjoy reading again. For more details and information on any of the library's outreach services, call Tom Kaminsky at 508-830-4250. Again, that's Tom Kaminsky at 508-830-4250.
And this morning, the sun rose at 6:12 a.m., setting at 7:12 p.m. this evening. Your lottery number is the Mass Daily 0981. The evening number is 7805. Monday Mass Cash 147,810. Sunday Mass Cash 3/18/22/25/32. And right now, let's check in with Julie, who's standing by with your horoscope, this day in history, science update, and today's complete program schedule. Julie, good morning.
Good morning. This is your horoscope for Tuesday, September 4th. Aries. Peace reigns in the home today. Members of your household could communicate with each other almost telepathically. You might find it strange, but it shouldn't be surprising. After all, they've been living together for a while. It's good for peace to be in the home. They can sense and avoid whatever irritates someone else. That should give you some welcome breathing space. Taurus. You could attend a social event today, but you won't feel like talking. You could be content just to listen to what everyone else says, feel at peace, and enjoy the warmth, music, and company. You may have been spending too much time at home and could well need to get out for a while. Relax, sit back in your chair, and enjoy yourself. Gemini. Someone, perhaps a close friend or partner, could present you with a small gift today, possibly something like a book. There might not be any special occasion other than your friend thought you'd enjoy it. This can bring up warm and affectionate feelings. You'll want to spend a considerable amount of time with this person. You may think it's rare to find someone so sensitive and kind. Cancer. Your intuition should be keener than usual today, but right now you're apt to be more interested in historical figures, perhaps people associated with spiritual disciplines. Books on these subjects could not only be interesting, but also informative. Insights you gain from reading about these people help increase your understanding of the present. Leo. Happiness reigns in the home, as everyone seems to have reached a new understanding of one another. You could also experience a new sense of peace and quiet. Everyone is concentrating more on reading and working on their own projects and less on socializing. This could be a wonderful time for you. You're getting along with your family, and the house is a peaceful haven. Virgo, today you might attend a group event of some kind in your neighborhood, possibly in the company of a partner. You and your friend might take an active part in discussing goals for the group. You feel strongly bonded to everyone, your partner, fellow group members, even the community. It's a warm, fuzzy feeling that could stay with you all evening. Libra, circumstances are changing regarding your professional goals. You may have been thinking about a change for a long time, but someone you meet today, perhaps in a social or casual situation, could provide the motivation you need to finally decide. This isn't just the result of outer changes. You've been changing inside too. You aren't the same person you were when you chose your current position. Scorpio, you're probably good at applying your spiritual principles to the way you live. You're especially good at it today, particularly when it comes to understanding others deeply. Relationships of all kinds will likely grow and improve, at least those that matter. Those that don't will disappear. This is a time of great outer and inner change for you. Make the most of it. Sagittarius, you're usually more outwardly directed, but today you might break that pattern. You could be in a contemplative mood and wondering about everything from metaphysics to philosophy to money to your future. You're basically feeling positive about life, but you might be at a crossroads now. It may take some serious thought before you decide which direction to go. Give yourself some time. Capricorn, today you might crave the companionship of friends and lovers alike. You're probably in the mood for some good food, good music, and great conversation, and that's just what you'll get. Later you might spend time alone with a love partner, reflecting on recent conversations. Some of them might be worthy of deeper thought. Have a pleasant day and a wonderful evening. Aquarius, you're feeling pretty strong now. You're probably in fairly good health and your mind is sharp. You've outgrown some areas of your life that no longer seem what they once were. One of these could be your work. You could be considering leaving a job you took primarily for the money and going into a profession you really love. Do it if it works for you. Pisces, are you getting along better than ever with a significant other? If so, it's probably because you're more attuned to what your partner thinks, feels, needs, and wants. You might fetch something before he or she even knows it's necessary. This can help you reach a new understanding of your beloved. Go with the flow and make the most of it. You'll be glad you did. And on this day in 1596, one of the first tsunamis ever to be recorded devastates the east coast of Kyushu, the southernmost major island of Japan. The tsunami was set off by a relatively small earthquake in Beppu Bay on Kyushu's east coast. Despite its weakness, the quake, which was felt as far away as Kyoto and Kagoshima, caused a landslide on the bay's coast. The landslide pushed so much water across the bay that it sent a 50-foot wave towards Uryojima Island. The very small island, located a mile offshore from Oita, Kyushu's capital city, had only a 6-mile circumference and was home to 5,000 people. The quake itself had little effect on the island's people, but the resulting wave totally submerged the island and killed about 1 in every 5 people. The island was uninhabitable long after the tsunami. The tsunami also went on to destroy Saganosiki and 2 other small villages located on the Beppu Bay coast. About 1,000 acres of the mainland virtually disappeared in the disaster. And in the morning science update, big mammals slow down to let their nerves catch up. Whether it's avoiding the slap of a fly swatter or shooting a tongue out at just the right moment to capture prey, fast reflexes can mean the difference between life and death in the animal kingdom. But a new study finds that not all reflexes are created equal. Larger animals are slower on the draw than smaller ones, and because of that, they can't move nearly as fast as they should be able to. When it comes to reflexes, there's no doubt that bigger animals are a little slower. Big animals have longer neurons, and that means more time for a signal to travel from the spine to a leg muscle, for example. But nerve speed isn't the only thing that slows down reflexes. So in the new study, researchers decided to look at myriad factors, like how fast muscles can generate force. They combed through data from other studies on electrically stimulated nerves and muscles in animals as small as shrews to as large as elephants. They also looked at the gaits of these mammals to calculate how long their stride and foot down positions were in relation to their body size, which allowed researchers to look at how relatively quick their reflexes are. As size scales up, so does the total time it takes for muscles to respond. Large mammals experience a delay between nerve firing and muscle movement that is more than 15 times longer than small mammals. But relative to the speed of their body movements, that delay is only twice as long, which means to compensate for slow signals, they're moving more slowly. If this didn't happen, a running 227-kilogram elk would be a cartoonish blur of legs, taking steps far faster than its reflexes could ever respond to. Call it a biological speed limit. And coming up on the schedule today, at 8 o'clock, the Wall Street Journal, 9 o'clock, the Boston Globe, 10 o'clock, the Boston Herald, 11 o'clock, the Washington Post, noontime, the New Yorker, 1 o'clock, the Christian Science Monitor, 2 o'clock, the New York Times, 3 o'clock, the North Shore News, 3:30, the South Shore News, 4 o'clock, the Metro West News, 4:30, Boston Magazine, 5 o'clock, the New England Journal of Medicine. At 6 o'clock on the Community News Hour, stories from the Eastern Journal, Hanover Mariner, Hingham Journal, and Holbrook Sun. 7 o'clock, USA Today. 8 o'clock, National Review. At 9 o'clock on the Pure Fiction Book Hour, it's episode 1 of Six Kill. At 10 o'clock on the Select Mix Book Hour, episode number 11 of We Were the Lucky Ones. 11 o'clock, the Pop Culture Show. Then new programming resumes at 12 a.m. Wednesday with the Berkshire Eagle. 12:30, the Daily Hampshire Gazette. 1 o'clock, the Springfield Republican. 1:30, the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. 2 o'clock, the Lowell Sun. 2:30, the Lawrence Eagle. 3 o'clock, the Fall River Herald. 3:30, the New Bedford Times. 4 a.m., the Cape Cod Times. And then new programming comes back at 5:30 with the Atlantic. 6 a.m., the Silver Threads Podcast. 6:30, the Soundbody Podcast. 7 a.m., New Republic. And at 7:30, a.m. Update. This announcement is brought to you by PEC TV.
Come to New England Village's Memory Cafe at 664 School Street in Pembroke. The Memory Cafe hosts a monthly gathering where people with memory loss and their companions can come together to make new friends, have some fun, and support one another. A sing-along and art project will be included. Memory Cafe will host its monthly meetings on the last Thursday of the month from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Advance registration is required by calling 508-830-4230. Participants must be accompanied by a family member or caregiver. An optional complimentary lunch is available at 11:30 a.m. for anyone signed up for the Memory Cafe. This Memory Cafe is brought to you by New England Village in partnership with the Center for Active Living. For more information or to register, call 508-830-4230. That's 508-830-4230.
Coming soon from the Talking Information Center, join reader Jay Clare as he presents the book Six Kill by Robert B. Parker. A bad boy movie star named Jumbo pushes the limits of his reputation when he's accused of rape and murder. When the Boston PD calls on Spencer, he meets Jumbo's young bodyguard, Six Kill, and the two form an unlikely alliance. It's a high-profile case for Spencer, but the Hollywood secrets he uncovers are sordidly unsavory, and not just those of the accused. Six Kill by Robert B. Parker will air for 9 episodes on the Pure Fiction Book Hour beginning September 4th and ending September 14th.
Welcome to Isla Earth. Home on the range only covers 20% of what it used to. That's worldwide, according to a new study from the World Wildlife Fund. Human encroachment has pushed elk, buffalo, tigers, and other large migratory mammals to the fringes of lands they roamed at the time of Columbus. The study is the first to measure human impact on biodiversity in the absence of large native mammals. John Morrison of the World Wildlife Fund says the group undertook the study because large mammals don't just top the food chain, they anchor it. Their presence maintains biodiversity, and their absence could trigger decline. Some places fare better than others. Australia's large mammal range has only diminished 30%, while Southeast Asia's has shrunk 99%. Tigers, buffalo, leopards, and wolves live with major range contraction, and elk top the list. But there's good news. Morrison says the study pinpoints where large mammals thrive and places where they still serve in their important roles. It also shows where reintroducing them could help recover whole ecosystems, places where we should once again let the deer and the antelope play. Learn more at islaearth.org. Isla Earth is produced by the Catalina Island Conservancy with support from its Fund for a Sustainable Planet, because Earth is an island.
Thank you for listening to the Massachusetts Reading Network, a window to independent life in your community from Cape Cod to the Berkshires.
This is volunteer reader Tom Keene, broadcasting from Springfield, Massachusetts. Stay tuned for more coming your way next.
WRRS Middleborough, Pittsfield, WVBF Middleborough, WDJM Framingham, WUML Lowell, WLLO Londonderry.
It is time to begin our reading of today's Wall Street Journal. It's Tuesday, the 4th of September, 2018, here in studio at TIC. We say hello to Norm and Loretta.
Well, good morning, folks. Hi, I'm Norm. I'm here with Loretta, and as always, it is our pleasure to read to you from this morning's issue of the Wall Street Journal. We'll start off with an article by Reva Gold entitled "Italian Politics Keep Investors on Edge." Fractious Italian politics sent tremors through global markets earlier this year. Investors have been hammering European stocks and bonds ever since, betting more trouble lies ahead. The yield gap between Italian and German debt, which reflects the extra premium investors made for holding Italian assets over their safer European counterparts, in August reached a 5-year high, according to TradeWeb. Yields on a 10-year Italian bonds have climbed about 3%, to their highest level since 2014. European equity funds, meanwhile, have posted outflows for 25 straight weeks, according to fund tracker EPFR Global, while ownership of euro area stocks in global portfolios has fallen to its lowest since the European Central Bank launched its massive bond buying program in January 2015, according to the data from the Institute of International Finance. Italy has hit sentiment hard, said Richard Saldana, an equity fund manager at Aviva Investors. Investors fear Italy's government could announce a budget this fall that puts the country's debt on an unsustainable course, and so amplify tensions with Brussels. I'll be watching the Italian budget very closely. If that passes smoothly, people will look at European equities again, said Mr. Saldana. In a country expected to grow by 1.2% this year, promises made in the new government have to, in a country expected to grow by 1.2% this year, promises made in the new government's coalition agreement, including a flat tax, a system in which everybody pays the same rate, and a citizens' income and pension overhaul, add up to 4.5% and 7% of gross domestic product of additional spending, according to estimates by UBS. Fitch Ratings on Friday cut the country's debt outlook to negative, citing concerns that fiscal loosening may leave the country's public debt more exposed to potential shocks. The stakes are high. Italy is in the Eurozone's Eurozone's biggest government borrower. While foreigners and households sold Italian debt this summer, Italian banks were buying it at the fastest pace since the Eurozone debt crisis. That means any losses in Italian bonds put more pressure on the banks, already modest capital ratios, driving them to buy even more debt, according to research from T.S. Lombard. Recent stress in Italian assets comes at the ECB phase out its bond purchasing program by the end of 2018. Traders say liquidity is worsening in bond trading, and political stability of the Eurozone has again been brought into question. A worst-case scenario over the budget deficit could see another sharp widening in Italian-German bond spreads, while the ECB is not there supporting markets like before, said Mohamed Kazmi, a portfolio manager at Union Bancaire Privé. Mr. Kazmi went into the year optimistic about Italy, but said he exited from his position in the country's bonds as soon as there were talks about Matteo Salvini, leader of the anti-immigrant League Party, and Luigi Di Maio, leader of the Five Star Movement, coming together to form a government. He also has been favoring U.S. credit over European credit exposure more broadly recently, in case the Italian weakness spills over into the rest of Europe. The S&P 500 has outperformed the Stocks Europe 600 by roughly 9 percentage points since mid-May, after a leaked draft agreement of a government program that proposed the introduction of procedures within the Eurozone to allow countries to quit the Euro, and said they would ask the ECB to write off 250 billion euro, which equates to $296 billion of government debt. The Five Star Movement and League later said that the draft was out of date and details had changed significantly. The exodus from European stocks has come despite solid economic fundamentals. The Citi Economic Surprise Index for the Eurozone is back in positive territory for the first time in 6 months, even as the U.S. and Japan sit in negative territory, while second quarter earnings for the Stocks Europe 600 Index are on track to grow by 10%, according to Thomas Reuter's data. Even if valuations in Europe are more attractive, you've had an absence of positive political developments, said Francois Savry, Chief Investment Officer at Prime Partners in Geneva. Italian stocks, meanwhile, quickly went from the year's best performers to among the worst. In mid-May, Italy's benchmark FTSE MIB index was outperforming the Stocks Europe 600 by 10 percentage points for the year, but has underperformed it by roughly 14 percentage points since then. Meanwhile, May and June mark foreign investors' biggest ever monthly outflows